G'day, Blade Lords and Wind Chargers. It's AOS Coach here, and we are talking all things Lumineth Realm-lords. There is no update for Lumineth when it comes to our Dawnbringer books, but I did want to revisit Lumineth, and I'm excited to introduce my guest in a second. But the catalyst and the reason for why I wanted to talk Lumineth is we are, as you probably already know, Generals Handbook 2023 is a magic-dominated kind of meta. There's power dice. There's all this great stuff. It's probably been the most magic we've had, at least in 3rd edition. Yet Lumineth is one of these factions at the bottom of the table when it comes to the competitiveness. Not like at the bottom, but you are like 47, 46. Like, you got a pretty low win percentage when you compare yourself to the other top tier kind of armies, which is probably a surprise given that we are in Magic and Seraphon's doing well and other Magic armies are doing well. So I wanted to have this conversation, and I'm going to introduce Jarod Brown, who has been doing incredibly well with Lumineth despite their poor win percentage. You came first at South Lake Open. You did well at the South Rumpus GT, at Boyce Cup. I saw you even did a pretty, decent run at Tacoma Open, and I was like, oh, this is a Shark Tank when you look at like Matt Beasley and Matt Newen and like everyone. Like, it was a Shark Tank at that GT.
Definitely.
So, given all the constraints, given what's going on in the GHB and where Lumineth sits, and despite your success, well, not even despite your success, how did we get the success for Lumineth? So, Jarod, welcome. And what brought you to our shiny Aetherquartz elves?
Thank you again, by the way, for having me on. But I've always had an interest in that high elf aesthetic. And when I saw Lumineth Realm-lords, I was immediately sold. A lot of people are going to puke hearing that because I guess there's some knife ear hate out there. But I fell in love. I was like, these guys are beautiful. The models are well made, even though mine are slap chopped. But it was a match made in heaven.
So, and it's actually funny, Jarod and I have a funny story. So I reached out to Jarod. He's one of the top performers on the ITC, doing very well with Lumineth. And it's funny because a lot of people in my chat for the last 4 to 5 months, whenever I post a video, the number one requested video has always been Lumineth. Like, when are you going to talk Lumineth? And my response has always been when someone does something. And you've had this couple of months where people have had Teclis in their list, but then, is Teclis a crutch? Is he someone that you don't need anymore, given the primal magic dice and the interactions there with some of those, static casting values? And it's taken a while for someone to kind of work out Lumineth. And Jarod, fun story. Do you want to share the story and then we'll get into the video?
Oh, yes. So about a year ago, you did a Lumineth Realm-lords video. I think that was with Jordan. And then I reached out in the comments section. I was like, I really want to talk Lumineth Realm-lords. And then you were like, yeah, you probably need to get those rookie numbers up. Because I think I just came off a 3-2 or something. And you're like, nah, I can't be showing a 3-2 right now.
I didn't say no. I think I come off the back of, I had Cooper and I had Jordan.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And Cooper as well. And Cooper is still doing really well with Lumineth, which is fantastic. But yeah, I think I responded to you a year ago. I'm like, let's pump up those rookie numbers. And here you are, doing 4-1s, 5-0. So I'm gonna take that as a coach victory that I steered you to success. I'm gonna take partial credit. Let's talk Lumineth. And I have a lot of questions for you because I put this video in preparation out to Discord. I put it out to Facebook and I said, yo, what are the questions that you have about Lumineth? And I've been inundated with a lot of questions. So maybe let's set the scene, right? I've already said some things. I've said that Lumineth's not doing generally well. I've said that it's a very high magic meta. And I've also said that of the magic armies, you would think that Lumineth would do well. So a couple of blanket statements there. As a Lumineth player, what are your thoughts and what have you found in those first couple of months of GHB in this Entorian Locus, Primal Magic Dice, Hoarfrost, Merciless Blizzard meta?
So I came into an interesting position here. The current tournament list I'm running, I had a 1.0 list of it in the last GHB. and it's currently actually on a battle report for Battleshock Wargaming right now. But I was playing a version of this, Runa Synthoi build, all this type of stuff, last GHB, and I really wanted to make it work. And I think that's the only reason I'm doing good with it now is because I had a lot of practice. But and then the new GHB comes out, and I'm like, this amps it up to 11. So a little changes here. Like I was running ballistas, and then they're like, "Hey, look out, Sir's going to change." And so I got with my team, my other Rage Babies, and I was like, "Guys, how do we feel about like a Wind Spirit now? Because why do we need ballistas when they're not going to do anything? But a Wind Spirit can," which we'll get to that, I'm sure. But as soon as the GHB came out, it seemed like a match made in heaven for Lumineth Realm-lords. We have so much extra casting. We rely on casting. If you're playing Zytrek, we have that bonus one to try and stop other people's casts. Like, this is the golden age for Lumineth, in my personal opinion. So we're just riding the wave.
So why on earth is their win percentage so low? Given that you've just said we're in a good spot for Lumineth, and obviously you've got plenty of tools, why are you at the bottom of the competitive meta?
That's a great question. I think we're still riding on, a lot of the Lumineth players are still riding on the Techless list. And Techless unfortunately got hammered in this edition. And I'm an old Techless player. I don't like to admit that. I feel like he carried us in the last GHB big time. A lot of my wins back in the last GHB were on his back. And I think everybody's still trying to hold on to that. And then our Sentinels got hit, Helon got hit, all these different things got hit. And I don't think Lumineth players are, or not in general, but some Lumineth players are willing to let go of Techless just yet. And I think that is why our win rate, is going down. It's because he just cannot function very well in the GHB. Mind you, there is a 5-0 right now with Techless. But still, if you're up against somebody who brings Antorian Acolytes and you don't have it, and you're a 1-drop, you're fighting against other players that are going to be able to tell Techless no. And those 10s are not so great when other people have more primal dice than you do, and you can't add any to your casts. So I think that's where we're at right now, because a lot of the players that are trying to pilot my current list are coming off of Techless. And so that's why I was saying, like, in the last GHB, I played like my 1.0 of this list. So I had a little bit of an edge going into the new GHB, already playing without Techless. And now other Lumineth players are starting to branch out into that world and start to see that there is so much more power to this book that doesn't have to ride on Techless's shoulders.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I remember, actually, I think it was one of the comments that I mentioned when I did the GHB preview, was that for Lumineth, I felt like a successful Lumineth build was going to have to drop Techless, because he is essentially, 1/3 of your army around that 700 point mark. So it's a lot of investment. And to your point, can't really take advantage of the primal magic dice, given that you've got the auto cast, or you've got the certain levels of caster, whether it be 12, 10, or is it 8? So the challenge is that, you've got 1/3 of your points, let alone your battle line, let alone any other tools. And I was curious to see, would Techless be able to stand up against his competition, or scaling back into the small wizards with, as you mentioned, the Antorian Acolytes, and building into that. Would that be the better build? And it's interesting as well, because Techless promotes that castle. And you're seeing a lot of castles right now, probably more castles than we've seen for a long time. Yet, again, you would assume that the Lumineth Techless build, being a castle, would play well into that. But here we are. It's probably a little bit challenged.
Absolutely. And talking about castles, you're 100% correct. I was just talking to a friend the other day about our lists, and I was like, wow, every list I built for all the different armies I play, they're castles now. Like, everything is castle-y at this point. And I think, to your point, 760 points, I don't remember how much Techless is off the top of my head, but for 760 points, if at least 2 of your casts are being unbound, whether that's Protection or Searing White Light, that's 760 points in 5 activations that you're going to get throughout a game with somebody, you're down 700 right there. And if they get you in the next round, you're down 700 again. You're just taking massive losses to your value to the points you're investing.
Yeah, it's wild. It is absolutely wild. I'll just bring up Teclis's War Scroll just to see. Although, like, if you cast Teclis's spell with the one cast being a 12, it can't be modified and it can't be unbound. So you could still get that one guarantee. You could still get that one guaranteed spell. But I guess the question is, by the way, his War Scroll, as according to the AOS app, is 740 points.
740.
740 for one guaranteed cast, which is probably like what, protection of Hish, protection of Teclis type stuff. And then
for 740, bro.
That's what I was going to say. Is like, yeah, you get that spell off and that great 5-up ward, but it's a big cost.
Yeah, and then what? One attack 2s and 2s, -3 d6 damage.
So I guess the point of this discussion with Jarod is going to be: is this the time to rethink about Lumineth, and how do we think about it? And what have you kind of learnt along the way from dropping Teclis? And if you still want to run Teclis, cool, that's fine. But just know that you're probably going to find some roadblocks, and probably going to maybe find that there are other options on the table, whether it is, more Cathalars, more, maybe leaning into other parts of the book. And I'll be curious to hear, Wind Charge is good. Is it time for Sevireth now? Because we had Sevireth in a lot of lists for a while, and then the change between moving in my shooting phase and yours kind of saw the stonks go down on the Wind Fox.
Yeah, I agree. But that was a lot of feels bad, and I can't say that I did not feel bad back when those rules were in play and I was doing that to people. There's feels bad there, especially if you were like a Nurgle player at the time. Like, it was so bad. I'm glad we're beyond it, but I still think there's stock there. So
all I'm saying is that you've seen like peaks and troughs, right? So let's restart and go right, because one of the questions came from one of the many questions is, let's get into the mentality of a Lumineth player for a second. Is it a high aggressive army for the folks who maybe haven't played Lumineth before, or maybe in your mindset, are you thinking about this ultra defensive Teclis bubble? Are you thinking about battle cattle and getting on objectives for wards? Are you looking at durability? Are you looking at board control? Like, what is the mindset and the build structure of a Lumineth army now?
So I'd like to compare Lumineth as like a surgery. Like, if you don't apply the right tool to the right operation, everything falls apart. And everything in the Lumineth book has a very specific job. And if it doesn't fulfill that job, then your surgery's failed, the game's over. Like, you have to be extremely technical in play. So there isn't really a defensive and there isn't really an offensive. It's, did the opportunity present itself? Okay, I'm going to apply the tool to that. Opportunity didn't present itself, then I'm going to do this differently. Like, it's very technical how you approach every single army you play. And that's why it's good for, like, I guess it's good for everybody, but it's very important that you learn everybody's army, because that is going to make you the most successful with whatever army you choose to play, but especially Lumineth Realm-lords. Because you have to know how to apply the right instrument to that operation.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because one of the great questions that came from Facebook was, this one came from actually, I think one of the moderators, David Althouse, was saying, first off, he asked, are foxes worth running? And I'm hearing that there might be some secret sauce with foxes. But he mentioned something that was really interesting. He said, on paper, it seems like that we have everything we need: consistent damage, strong units, monsters that hit like a truck, fast cavalry, an amazing spell lore, 2 to 3 reasonable battle tactics, and a durable anvil unit. So in David's opinion, the roster is pretty fleshed out. And yet we can't seem to shift the big bad enemies like OBR, Soul Black Gravelords. We get chipped away from Seraphon. So the question that David had, and you may agree or disagree with that statement, but David's question was, what is it that Lumineth's lacking in the toolkit to effectively fight the meta right now?
That's a great question. I would say the main tool we're lacking at the moment to fight like Null Myriad. I mean, they took a points increase. I think there's still a fighting chance, especially with my current list, because Tacoma, I lost to the guy that won that event. There was still metal there. I took him to the very end. We had almost nothing on the table, and it was deathly close for an OBR matchup. I think we have the tools, but the main problem is Tom Guan. You know, he did me real dirty at Boise Cup. I tell you, real dirty. I think he like left 40 zombies in reserve, and I was like, bro, they're gonna die. And he's like, I don't need them. I was like, oh man. But the main tool that we don't have is when we commit to something like zombies, we lose value right out the gate. So we charge with our Dawn Riders. We do a massive amount of damage to zombies, and then they 5-up Mortalist back on death, and we're taking models off. Like, we're losing value, and he's smiling because he knows he's just got to roll a 3-up in his turn to get them back if you were to kill the unit. So it's like we lose out on that fight, and we know that the only thing we can hold on to is like Gravetide, and so we have to super commit to it. And if Gravetide does not pay off, then we're on the back foot because we can't put in the damage into zombies and take what they give us back, because a lot of times we're outside of our 5-up ward and stuff like that. So that's just straight damage, and then they kill our models and bring more of their models back. Zombies are we just don't have that tool to take them out at range without Gravetide's assistance. So it's tough. It's really tough.
But wouldn't your Sentinels be able to handle the corpse cart, which is ultimately what's powering those zombies?
Yes, but I can't say that the corpse cart is the difference. I killed both of Tom's corpse carts, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter. He doesn't need the mortals to hit. He just needs the mortals to when you die. That's it.
So is it that you don't have the tools to handle the army, or are you just finding that maybe you're not as efficient as, look, let's be honest, like zombies should go up, right? And I don't want to kind of harp on the zombie because not every tournament's going to have that horde of zombies, and you may not face it at a tournament, but you are going to potentially place OBR, Korn, Gits. There's a lot of armies doing quite well in the meta. Like, do you have the tools to handle that, or is it just the fact that for the last couple of months you've been trying to work out these non-techless castle-y type builds and trying to find the combinations to work this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say outside of that zombie conversation, we have the tools to deal with everything else. We have them there. And that's been tried and tested by me. And I know other Lumineth players are seeing same results. We have the tools for everything else. Like, it's all there. It's just, are you bringing those tools with you? And do you know what tools those are to make sure to have them? Because you do need that all-comers list now in this meta. You have to, I guess you probably need it for every meta, but especially us. We can't just spam one thing and expect to get results out of it.
So I'm going to bring up the rules in a second, and like I said, I've got a million questions, which is going to be great. Hopefully we kind of cover them all. Actually, I'll ask one other question before we get into the actual rules and kind of bring this to life. I thought it was a really good question, actually, from Jace of Spades in my Discord, talking about like, how does Lumineth play in 2023? And I think this is probably the key here, is that every Generals Handbook, I always advise people to not just bring the list that worked last season and try to squeeze it into the new season. I always suggest, like, take that pause for a second, look at the new rules, look at the battle tactics. What is it going to take for you to score the 5 battle tactics? What is it going to take for you to score the grand strategy? Is there things that used to not be good that's now good? And what are things that used to be really good, maybe not as good? But Jace asking around, how do you play Lumineth, right? Given that, the role of the Stone Guard versus the Warden, which are two, key elements here. Is it time to bring in the Dawn Riders? And I know, people have talked about Hoarfrost on Dawn Riders and, really slapping with them, this and you've got so many access to allies too. Like, is it time to bring back Gotrek and, Stormcast Chariots like this? Like, is it time to break the castle and start thinking about independent threats and, hammers and anvils and different sources of damage as opposed to what you used to have, just this immovable castle?
Yeah, absolutely. I was taking a close look at like Kenerai because they're cheap and they deep strike and they can steal points and stuff like that. But one of the biggest fortunate events that took place is that when the new GHB dropped, we took massive points deductions in the key areas like the Blade Lords, the Dawn Riders. I don't think, I mean, to each their own. I mean, try and test everything. But I think with all those price cuts, we can comfortably settle into all of the units that we have access to in Lumineth Realm-lords and be able to compete with them effectively without needing to rely on anybody else.
Cool. All right, makes sense. I feel like you are the Swiss Army knife. And then, look, it took a while. I remember when I picked up the first Cities book, and now I'm kind of in the same boat again with the new Cities book. It's going to take time for things to kind of surface. And there's some things that are obvious. People talk about like Fusiliers and Flagellants, and like there's some things that are very obvious. But there's obviously a lot of secret sauce as well that I think will take time to surface. And those things that are super obvious are probably going to get nerfed in some capacity. So, I'm running a lot of Flagellants. I'm like, I want to see how much that Pope's going to cost me before I commit to like, this is my LVO 2K list.
Right.
Because I know that Pope is probably going to go up, that Warforger go up.
Oh,
because
yeah.
you can see like it's too good.
Pontifex or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Pontifex. All right, let's start at the rules, and we've kind of got a mixture of Generals Handbook 2023 and your current rules. So when you look at the full allegiance abilities, and Great Nations will come in a second, how do you think about whether it's your Aetherquartz reserve and how you play around with it? The lightning reflexes, is this something that you really build around and it's a way for you to deal lots of damage? And how do you think about some of these rules?
So ultimately, and I think we all see it this way, the Aetherquartz reserve is really that all-out defense that we need in a very clutchy moment. It usually comes into play if you're getting alpha struck or you're first to go first and somebody double turns you. It's really just there for that. And then for your heroes, magical boost is always great to have in your back pocket. The only time I think heightened reflexes really comes up, and some people are going to, raise an eyebrow at me for this, but I do it with the Dawn Riders. Like if I'm going into some chafy stuff that's all by itself on its lonesome in a corner that's got 1 wound or 2 wounds, I'm paying that price. I'm hitting with 2s on spears and then 3s with hooks. Like I'm going for it. And a lot of times they're like, why? That's a defensive thing. But in those like scenarios, I want to one-shot what I go into, or at least, provide a very harsh bravery check. Lightning reactions. Oh my gosh. So with the Cenari Enlightener, this is nuts. And it catches so many people off guard. The fact that if you can get that speed of Hish on a, like, say it's like a mountain cow or something, and then you roll that 3 up, because they don't unbind it by any reason, who knows. You get that 3 up, and then you toss it on a Valinor, and then you got 2 giant mountains flying up the table 12 inches at you, and then rolling a 2d6 charge. It really catches people off guard, and you're fighting with both. Like, before they even get to do anything, you're fighting with both. So a lot of times, like, I do that with Eltharion and Blade Lords. Like, we'll be in the mid game, and somebody will, like, I played it against Aaron Daly. Don't mean to call him out like this, but he moved his zombie dragon. He's a great player, by the way, and an awesome friend. He moved his zombie dragon like on the very edge of the table to go meet my Dawn Riders in combat. And, safe distance. You think you're safe, but that's on average, I think, 17-inch threat range when Speed of Hish went off for Eltharion and then the Blade Lords, and they're flying up the board 12 inches, rolling a 2d6 charge, and he was like, I did not see that coming, and they're both going to fight me first. Okay, shoot.
Yeah.
Like, lightning reactions is reflexes. I said reflexes. Lightning reactions is nuts, and it's such a great thing for Lumineth Realm-lords because we can go into combat feeling relatively safe, especially in an enemy combat phase. Like, oh, you just set up all these multiples. Well, I like to tell my opponent right out the gate, like, hey, just so you know, I fight with 2 units when it's my turn, because if they're setting up multiple combats, nothing sucks more than to be like, I'm going to fight here, and then I'm going to fight here. And they're like, no, wait, it's my turn. It's like, lightning reactions. I'm fighting with 2.
Is there any good recipients that you build around? Obviously, it's Lumineth, so anyone can use it. But when you're thinking about combinations, whether especially when you're going in offensively, is it your 2 battle cattles? Is there other particular units that are finding good combinations?
Yes, great combinations like the one I said earlier, the Eltharion and Blade Lords is fantastic. Or if you're setting up a light hit and you just want to get a Dawn Rider going and you want to take on something with your Blade Lords or your spears. I don't often charge with my spears though. So in those circumstances, yes, but in an Alarith list, huge, because you're setting up all kinds of things, especially if you're moving fast, which is why I think in any Alarith army, a Enlightener is key to victory. That 2 cast on Speed of Hish, if you can get it going.
Considering we're talking about damage dealing right now, are you finding like Blade Lords and your Kangaroos, your Wind Chargers, are they interesting tools to be using at the moment in the meta? Or because I haven't seen Wind Chargers for maybe the whole time. Like the poor old Kangaroos, they haven't not really hit the table very often.
Yeah, the Wind Chargers, I had a lot of play with those back when Helon was a little bit more degenerate. Nowadays, there is a play there because they're so cheap, and if you double stack them and you run them up the table and you're hitting on 2s and 2s, is it -2 or -1? I think it's -1 and -2 in melee. That's okay, but I think it just kind of equals out from the +1 attack. I think if you do the math hammer for that, it's about the same. But sure, there's a little bit of play there. I just don't think it's enough damage. It's great to ignore wards and whatnot, but to your point, or to your message about Blade Lords, now they are nuts. The fact that they have 2 different stances, one being just let me put in a 5-man unit 6 mortal wounds into you on a 2-up. And then mine are double stacked, so 11 mortal wounds into you on a 2-up. That catches so many people off guard. It's like, hey, okay, that was 10 mortal wounds. And they're like, really? It's like, yes, that's perfect strike. And they're 2-inch range. And then the hindsight to that is you're fighting a horde army. You just turn on, what's the other one? It's not perfect strike. It's...
Oh yeah, the other one. I was just looking at the Kangaroos for a second, but keep going. I'll bring up the rule. It's the
sweeping strike or something. I don't know, some 40k name. I don't know.
It's all good. It's all good. I brought up the Law Seeker. Keep going. Just keep talking. I'll bring it up.
So yeah, being able to add additional attacks using the
Flurry of Blows. Flurry of Blows.
Flurry of Blows, using the profile that they have for, I think it's, no, not Vindictors. It's the same rule set as a Stormcast Eternal, their Blade Lords. You just get bonus attacks for 10-man units and then 20-man units, I think, is how it goes. Yeah, it's 10s and 20s. So you get +2 attacks if you're attacking something with 20 or more, and then
you get +1 attack with the Flurry of Blows if it's 5 to 9 models.
There it is. Thank you.
And +2 if it's 10 or more models, which is probably even more generous.
Yes, largely generous. And if you're going into Chafe, it's great. You don't need Hoarfrost. You're just doing a ton of damage.
To go back to the Kangaroo comment around the Wind Chargers, I think part of the challenge is it's around the similar points to the Dawn Riders, and I would probably just find the Dawn Riders more valuable in most situations.
Absolutely.
I think for me, that's kind of where, like, I'm not going to take both, and if I'm going to take one, it's Dawn Riders every day of the week, unfortunately. If the points were different, or if there was a meta where wards were just like absolutely out of control, sure, the extra piling stuff is neat, but it doesn't outweigh what the Dawn Riders bring consistently.
Absolutely. I agree. And they have Shining Company. Like, they get the bonuses. So why not? And they cast. That's so awesome.
Again, it's just like, and that's why I'm saying there's more argument. There's just more things that I need from Dawn Riders than I do from the Kangaroos, other than them bloody being cool models. One thing I did want to ask, because I found a lot of value in this in my Gits army. You're like, wait a second, why is he talking Gits? And it's the magical boost Aetherquartz. So I've been playing a lot of Bad Snatchers, which is a sub-faction in the Gits that almost nobody runs. I'm like one of those mad lads, in my, having too many mushrooms. But one of the rules that I get as a Bad Snatcher is that I can re-roll one of the dice on a spell cast, which has been really interesting to get me out of miscasts. It's helped me against Khorne, especially when that Skull Alter's around and can do even more pain if I miscast. And even though I can't add a primal magic dice to that roll because I've done a re-roll, it's gotten me out of a lot of situations, and it's allowed me to cast things that I would normally want to cast that I don't want to put a primal magic dice. I get more consistency from my spell casting. Have you found that also true at all, or that's not really a worry for you? Like you just go +1 to casting all the time?
It's actually really rare. So I look at Magical Boost as my my red button for miscast. Rarely will I actually use the +1 unless it's like the clutchiest thing I need. Like if I'm just in the most dire situations and I'm like, this spell has to go, I'll do it. But other than that, it is my reroll to cast, because that we have a lot of reroll to cast protections, but our non-heroes do not, because we have the shrine. The shrine will benefit our heroes once per battle round. No, I think it's once per turn for that one. It's once per battle round for the command point.
Once per turn. Once per cleansing rituals, once per turn.
Yeah. And then if you have it occupied, you can get the command point once per battle round. But our heroes have that protection to reroll a miscast, but our other units do not. So I'll hold that Aetherquartz for that situation if I don't need to blow it for a defensive. That's the only way I look at it, to be honest.
Yeah, same as me. Like being able to get out of miscast is obviously the number one important thing.
Oh yeah.
The +1's nice, but and you know what? If you really want to go hard on Hoarfrost or Blizzard or any spell, you could always go the +1 to the cast plus the primal magic dice once you're not in miscast territory. So sit on Arcane, get another +1. So you really need this spell off. You've got plenty of tools to increase that cast.
Absolutely.
Hell, do it on the Law Seeker and pop it, Blizzard immediately.
Blizzard.
which gets us into a conversation soon, but not yet. We'll hold it off for now until we get into deep thinker territory. But of the great nations, are there ones that you really like in this particular season? Like, is Zytrek, as an example, just another way to lean into the magic when you're not taking Techless? Or is there something here that you're like, there's a sleeper?
So Zytrek is huge, especially in this current GHB, and it's also the rhyme and reason to my list. Like, who could complain about more reliable spells? You know what I mean? I basically look at it as all of my spells that I've taken on each of my units are one less casting value because of this subfaction alone, and I think that reliability is huge to us. And especially when it goes into unbinding your opponents. That extra +1 just goes a long way. The second best here, obviously, is going to be Metrica with these new rules. I only look at these new rules as all-out defenses now. Like, okay, so if you just play Alarith units, you have an automatic all-out defense at all times. And then if you play Metrica, you have an automatic all-out defense twice on all your units at all times, because that's a huge impactful rule. Like, we haven't seen what that's going to do to the meta yet either. We don't have a whole lot of information. We don't have a lot of Metrica players that are maybe we do, but I just haven't seen them yet, that are going out and putting this to the test. And I think that there's a huge amount of power here. But as far as the other ones are concerned, Helon took that hit. I don't think that one's going anywhere. Sire is great if you like Aetherquartz, but you have to take a Cathalar if you want to get anywhere. Alumnia, counting on objectives, if it's okay, but we're so paper thin that we're gonna be under the amount at some point anyway, if we're taking any losses. And then Ilyatha's, if you want to all out defense twice, that's or not. Well, blow your Aetherquartz for the defensive boost twice. Sure, that's great, but you still need a Cathler there because you need it. Well, no, I think the Cathler can only slingshot or absorb one of those and slingshot it to an enemy unit in the same phase. I don't think it can do it twice. Don't quote me on that, but I don't think that's possible.
How dare you not know every single rule of every single this type of book? I do want to ask you though about your Metrica, because one of the comments that I hear often with your Metrica is obviously, you can reduce the rend, which is great right now because people are putting Hoarfrost trying to get like rend 3 on a billion attacks where possible, but your Metrica, your Alarith, like your Stone Guard, only get a ward against mortal wounds, and they're finding that you pay a lot of points for it, but maybe not getting the most value out of Stone Guard, or maybe a struggling to get the value out of Stone Guard, especially with that. Well, they don't take a lot of mortal wounds on objectives, so I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So, yes, the Alarith army lists I think need to have protection, especially in this. And I'm gonna admit this now. This extremely mortal wound heavy edition we're in. Everything's getting mortal wounds, and a lot of things are getting mortal wounds when it dies. Everything is getting mortal wounds, and so outside of the Stone Guard save, if you're sitting on an objective, we need to have an answer for that. And our cows suffer immeasurably when we're taking mortal wounds and we don't have a ward. Like it's really bad. And those spirits of the mountain, you can't even heal those because they're not heroes. You can't use your heroic recovery to bring them back into the fray. So you're considering, what do you want to bring? Emerald Life Swarm? Like that's 60 points for something that got nerfed and still stayed the same price. Yeah. Like it's a tough place right now. It's great that we can keep our Stone Mage nearby and fight on full bracket, but those cows will drop, especially if you pump a lot of mortal wounds in there. So I don't think we have a lot without protection to some degree.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, right? Is people have played around with your Stone Guard types of list, and people talk about how how hard it can be to move a unit of 10 off an objective. And if you can put damage through rend as opposed to mortal wounds, if your only source of damage is mostly mortal wounds, you will get a lot of value. There's a lot, getting a 4-up, or you get to the Stone Guard before they get onto an objective, so you can chip away at them. That also helps. But yeah, it's an interesting one with Hoarfrost being able to get up to rend 3.
Yeah. You could have clan rats rend 3 in you. Oh god.
Yeah, when it was only like rend 1, rend 2, you can normally absorb it with the Metrica build. But anyway, I'm kind of harping on this. I think a lot of people are trying to work out what's the best way to. No, I think people are still struggling on what's the best way to kind of make the most of Stone Guard, because they are a big point sink, especially because you probably want to reinforce in at least one unit, if not two, and then your points start quickly creeping up.
Absolutely. Yeah, that attests to the list I currently run. Yeah.
All right. And by the way, Jarod has talked lists many times. Rest assured, new people to the channel, lists are coming. We will talk lists. We'll get to that point. But anything else you'd mention on the Great Nations? I think, Zytrek, I think just to one call out as well, Zytrek with the Dispelling and Unbinding is probably the more impactful thing for me, because there's been so many times in this season where I've equaled the casting value of my opponent. Sorry, I've equaled the Dispelling roll or the Unbinding roll, and I've just needed that one extra. And I'm like, do I want to spend a primal magic dice just to get that one extra? I've already invested one. If I don't invest this last one, then I know your spell goes through, or yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, I just needed that plus one. That plus one would make a difference. Or if I do a primal magic dice, I rolled a 1 when I needed a 2. Again, like just having that little bit more consistency is super impactful right now.
Huge.
Nothing else?
Nothing else.
All right. We agree. So, one thing I want to acknowledge is the Null Stone Adornment, and this will be probably one of the quickest conversations we'll have, although I know you've got some secret sauce. Do you see many Lumineth lists voiding wizards and getting themselves a Null Stone Adornment?
I'd love to see it. I think there's I know a guy in the Lumineth Discord. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he runs like 3 foxes and a bunch of kangaroos. I think in that case, you're good. Yeah, you can take one, but you're rarely, if ever, going to find a Lumineth list that doesn't have one spell cast in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's also like, do you even want to trade off of you've got so many great spells and so many great spell abilities. Do you even want to sacrifice that? I think it's hard just to if you slipped over, you'd find a wizard in your army.
Yeah. They're hard to miss.
But you were talking to me earlier before we started streaming about some spice around. Was it the Nullstone Pebble you wanted to kind of talk about?
Pocket sand, the pouch of null dust.
Our pouch. So this being the 1/1, 2/2, 3 miscasts, although it is a once per battle artifact. So I know things like Khorne love this. Your Gargans players can love this. Fire Slayers can love it. It's definitely the most popular of the Nullstone adornments.
Yeah, absolutely. My most recent experience with that is I already forgot my opponent's name. That's too bad. But he had the pocket sand, and the best way to play around this is hold your deep thinkers off. He was a Khorne player. Hold it off. Like, why not? Hold off deep thinkers, and then they're finally like, here, pocket sand. And they could be like, well, great. I'm not casting at all. I'm just going to deep think it out and then use my rerolls to try and save myself from any of these unfortunate circumstances of doubles. So that's good tech that I found while playing against him. I knew he had the pouch of null dust. I was like, okay, I'm waiting. As soon as he said I'm using it, I was like, all right, deep think, deep think, deep think. Let's go.
And it does lead you into, as we talked earlier, the reroll Aetherquartz, being able to get yourself potentially out of these situations.
Yeah.
I like
in the event, but I think even when that went off, there was a lot of units I just chose not to cast with because I was like, I'm not taking the risk.
Yeah, depends on when they do it. Like often they'll do it either if you declare magical dominance as your battle tactic, or they know like turn 2 to turn 3, which is where the clutch of the game might happen. They go, cool, just drop it, and
absolutely.
Yeah, you might hold back your attack, or you might have to just accept that you're not going to have a particular buff, or you go through your guarantees like, yep, guarantee auto 9.
Yeah, I'll have protection up. I'll have total eclipse.
I'll sacrifice Blizzard. I'll sacrifice Blizzard this turn because I just want to get these off.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, speaking of Blizzard, we have 3 new spells. And this is kind of where we're going to get into a little bit of a rules discussion. And folks, know that, if you're listening to this in the future, Games Workshop may clarify this, but I know there is some discussion and some questions that are happening. I think it's obvious. Jarod, I think, thinks it's obvious.
It's obvious.
Let's clarify it. So while he has a sip of drink, I'm going to assume that Rupture will start off there. Is a useless spell for you. You're not going to pick Rupture as a spell. You're probably not taking an Incarnate, so the rule change to Incarnates being able to affect your own Incarnate doesn't impact us whatsoever. But being able to either turn the Incarnate Wild and reduce it a level, or turning a spell into a predatory endless spell, not really a choice unless you're going to take a general with Shaman of the Chilled Land. Is that a fair assumption? And I bought enough time while you had a sip of your drink.
Yeah, that is a very fair assumption. I think the time of the Incarnates is coming to an end here. That was a very detrimental spell, and a lot of lists, I should say, do take the Shaman for all 3 spells. So you get into that matchup where somebody ruptures you and then commits to killing off the Incarnate. There goes, 1/4 of your army, or how many? I don't know how many points that guy is.
It's 480. 480.
Yeah, it just Incarnates are gone, I think, for the most part, but you'll still see them. I mean, we'll always see everything.
While we're talking incarnates really quickly, is there a place for an incarnate in a Lumineth list, or is the points too expensive, or it doesn't do enough for what you need?
We can't currently commit to that points cost, especially with these new rules. But I think old incarnate, we could find some play there, but not currently. Mm-mm.
Points? Is it that's what's stopping you?
Yeah, that's a considerable chunk, especially for the lot of things that I want to bring. I mean, sure, you can pin somebody's army up, but this GHB is punishing the incarnate now. It's not worth it.
Okay. Just for anyone who's considering bringing in a incarnate, or they're like, oh, I just need something that can hold and pin my opponent while I cast spells and shoot them off the board and do all the things. Incarnate, yeah, could possibly fill that, but probably not the best points investment from what I'm hearing.
Mm.
Hoarfrost.
Oh,
Hoarfrost, great spell, plays well with Deep Thinkers. You have a lot of units that I believe will benefit either from the hit, wound, but more importantly, the rend characteristic change. What are your thoughts on Hoarfrost? Do you like it? And what's the characteristic you like to change? And who's a good recipient?
so I love it. I love Hoarfrost. I think the Honest Wargamer, when he reviewed my list, he told me that. Well, he told everybody that he made it sound like Hoarfrost was and I don't think it was his intent by any means, but he made it sound like Hoarfrost was probably my best successful thing in the list. But honestly, I don't think I really ever got it off, or went for it all that often. There was just something else to do at the time. My Cathler had a different job. It just, but when it did, it was nice, and it would usually go to the Blade Lords, especially get your flurry of blows off for those 5s and 10s sized units, or the Dawn Riders for an exceptional. I put it on the hooves. I mean, people would be like, "What the heck?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'm putting it on the hooves. 3s and
It's
4s on hooves. That's a lot of hoof
it's
attacks."
It's funny you say that. One of my friends who's an avid Lumineth player, Hayden, you know who you are, was literally the minute he saw Hoarfrost, that's the first thing he messaged me. You're like, I'm going to Hoarfrost my Dawn Rider Hoove attacks.
The
And I'm like,
hooves.
well, yeah, 2 attacks each. I'm like, you're insane. You're
Why
insane.
not? Go for it. But also, if I checked with my opponent and I knew what the save was, and if there wasn't a good save already, I would just switch hooves over to the 2-up or the 3s for more consistent damage. It really just depended on what I was hitting, and a lot of times I'd never have really commit my Dawn Riders to a target that had a fantastic armor save. So there's some play there. It's just extra attacks, weight of attacks, and throwing them in and just forcing armor saves.
Yeah, getting the rend up in Lumineth is super powerful, because really there's not a lot of rend outside of your Alarith style units, right?
Right.
So and like some of them are also hitting on 4s, so you could bring it down to 2s if you really wanted to. But like as you said, the Blade Lords, the Hoof attacks. I mean, even if you want to put it on, be super defensive and accept the Warden charge, people are going to charge into those Wardens. Chuck it. What'd you chuck it on with the Wardens? You chuck it on their. I
I'd
mean,
probably put it on their wound, or no,
yeah,
not their wound, their rend, because if they're getting charged already wounding on 3s.
yes.
Um, I think I only ever did that once in a match. Yeah, it wasn't what my army functioned off of. It was nice to have when I chose to have it, but it wasn't necessary. But it's great.
How would they be wounding on 3? Sorry, with the pike.
Because they already wound on 4s as is, and so if they get charged, it becomes a 3, and then
Yeah, go on.
it becomes a 3, and then if you've already got the 3, then yeah, I'd might as well have a Ren 2, I guess, or something like that. So
As I asked the question, I actually read the full rules. I'm like, I'm an idiot. I already know this. When you're charged, you get +1 to wound, and you
yes,
also improve the rend characteristic by 1. So you can't modify the characteristic any further. So if you set it as a 3, you can't then add +1 to make
yeah,
it rend 4. But you can override it just basically means that you'd be static at rend 3 or rend 2. Like if you only got a rend 2, you can't get it again to Ren 3, because once it's modified, it's modified. You can only modify the dice roll.
Yeah, I think there's a math hammer for it, but I think I would give it the Ren 2 instead of the Wound 2. But man, there's math there, sure.
I would agree with you. Like the payoff is when you look at Maths Hammer and you see the payoff between going from a 4 to a 3 and then a 3 to a 2, the 3 to a 2 actually isn't that great unless you had an industrial amount of attacks. But you don't have that, so it's not that worth it. But Hoarfrost, great spell, casting value of 8, works with Deep Thinkers. You have a couple of units that can really benefit from this particular rule. Love it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk Blizzard, and there's some very specific, interesting rules here with Blizzard because 1, you love the mortal wounds. 2, Deep Thinkers come into play. 3, you now only have one of the only sources of teleport Blizzard wizards in the game, and it's not technically a teleport. It's not technically a teleport. Yeah, I was about to quotation mark myself because my gits loved it. I could teleport using the Hand of Gork. I'm outside of 9, but within 12. Roll those primal magic dice, and I would Blizzard you with my wizard. Everyone can't do that anymore, except for you.
Correct.
Technically correct.
Technically correct. The degenerate side of that, I don't no. But with that Lore Seeker, obviously, we set it up 3 inches away from enemy units if we choose to put it into Lone Agent. So that gives us an opportunity to cast Merciless Blizzard when the game begins for an Alpha Strike army. I wouldn't recommend bringing a Lore Seeker if you don't have a 1-drop, only because if you do set it up in a cheeky spot, your opponent might just be like, okay, I'll just take care of it. I mean, yeah, sure, that maybe forces your opponent to go first, but you're losing a Lore Seeker right out the gate, and that's just no fun. It's like, I brought a Lore Seeker just so I didn't have to go first. Like, you're going to probably be a 1-drop. But, if you build up your Antorian Loki, you get good rolls on your primal dice, you could potentially Merciless Blizzard, turn 1, 3 inches away if you want it to be a target. Sure. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. I would be like 11 and 7/8 from a target you want to go after, but whatever you need to do. Some people like to jump into and fight in combat, make him his finest hour, just Blizzard something, fight, die. Sure.
It's 160 points, so you need to be really trading up. So if you're going to do it, it's a great tool, but you need to be really smart on how you make the most of it because it is almost 1/10 of your army. So don't commit it to dying and then you didn't get the value, right? Look for cover, look for the right target. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. But there's one thing that I want to call out, and Jarod and I were having this discussion. I want to make it really clear, and some of you will get upset with me in the comments section, but I'll accept this, is that you cannot use Deep Thinkers on Merciless Blizzard. You cannot. Go read
You're going to start some fire.
That's fine. But if you look very clearly at the Battle Tome errata, as per September 2023, can Lumineth Realm-lords Wizard use their Deep Thinker ability to automatically cast a spell that has a casting value of 10 or higher? It specifically says, such as Merciless Blizzard. The answer is no. Now, I don't know what mental gymnastics and rules lawyering you have, but I err on the side of caution. I think this is very clear. You have to use your primal magic dice. That's why Antorian Acolyte Battalion is probably going to be more beneficial to you, but you can't Deep Think as this. Do you have a counter argument, Jarod, or the voice of the other half who believe this?
Yeah, I am strictly against it. Not only that, I'm sure you have to really set this up, even if it was a thing. And there's ways to fail, but I think on average you will not fail with the potential degenerate things you can do had it been legal. Like Zytrek, Aetherquartz, you're already casting it on an 11 before you start throwing primals into it. So that's going to be really hard for your opponent to interact with, especially if neither one of you guys are getting a lot of primals or anything like that. And most unbinds, your opponent is not getting close to an 11 to start, and you're already doing that. So I think there's a little bit of feels bad there. I hope they don't rule in favor of it because I think we don't need to do more feels bad in Lumineth, and I think we as Lumineth players can find more power in our book without this. But yeah, right now rules is stated like you cannot do this, but there's some gymnastics right now.
Cool. All right. Just want to acknowledge that because I know some Lumineth players believe that you can because it does say you automatically cast it, and those conditions sound like it's correct. Like it's, but as it doesn't say automatically successfully cast. Like it doesn't actually indicate. And again, the errata is very clear, very
Yeah.
clear, very clear. But Blizzard is a good spell. Do you like it? Do you take it often? Is it something that you have in the back pocket? Like, talk to me about Blizzard theory in Lumineth.
Blizzard wins games, especially right now in the GHB. That's on my Enlightener and my castle when I'm castled up. My Enlightener has that 12-inch protection wave around my whole entire castle. I don't really castle entirely. We'll get to that when we get to the lists, but I make sure that 12 inches is there. And so if I do get alpha struck or, destruction armies throw themselves into me, or, like at Salt Lake City Open, Varangard get thrown into me. It's like, okay, well, I know you got a 4-up ward, but I'm going to Blizzard you because they'll always be together. And the reason for that is we have a great rule with our bodyguard, and that is the Blade Lords. So if I do roll my ones and I get some bad luck, my Blade Lords will just take all that damage instead of my Enlightener and just blowing up my general. So I just pass them off to them. So we're in a good place with Blizzard. I think it's fantastic. Do I think it needs to go away? Yes, because it's a lot of damage. But yeah, it's a must take for us. It definitely protects my castle, and yeah, it wins games, especially when you drop like a Scarbrand.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a little bit now that you can't teleport. So other armies being able to teleport within range Blizzard. So I think let's see how it goes. Just now that they've made the change, let's see if it's still impactful. You might find the range go from 12 to 9. You might find something else will happen. But right now, it's a great source of mortal wounds. And I think for you, especially in Lumineth, like I do with Gits, even though I can't teleport, it's actually not so bad because I've got enough defensive castles to be able to maybe not use it offensively like I used to, but thinking about it defensively, where someone comes into my troops or if I'm defending and I've got like a wall of screens or something durable, you come in with my zone of death, then I Blizzard you. If you ignore my zone of death, I retain objectives, I'm not taking damage, and I'm rerouting those attacks somewhere else.
Absolutely, especially if it offers us an opportunity to reverse the double turn.
Yeah, yeah, because you're in 12 and you're like, whoa, wait a second. If I give you the turn, you're going to Blizzard me. I really need this key piece. I'm going to take it and get out of that range. So,
Yeah,
and that's where the Law Seeker psychologically also plays a really good. Just because I can doesn't mean like they start like playing around with their deployments, trying to zone you out, making sure that you're not within 12 inches to Blizzard that key thing, and all of a sudden they're on the backboard. So there's a lot of psychological benefit in addition to actually what it does on the table.
absolutely.
Anything else with Blizzard? Like it does stuff. Like actually, I'll ask you one more question about Blizzard. I have a theory. So whenever I see a 1 on my original spell cast, I'm out. I will not use a primal magic dice. I'm like, see you later. I could roll a 6 and a 1. As soon as I see that 1, I'm like, I'm out.
Bro,
I
paid for that every time. I am not doing it. I paid for it every time. I've always rolled the extra 1. I've always done it. I won't play the game.
Even with my 70-point wizards, I'm like, yeah, I'm out. I'm
Nope.
done. Because
Nope.
I can't afford all that damage to the other parts of my army. I just can't afford it.
No. And especially in a Synthoi build, all your wizards are relatively close. So it is not worth it. Abort mission. Thank you. We'll try again later.
It's funny. My Gits is very much like a Lumineth build. Like I'm basically a Lumineth player because I do the exact same thing. I'm running these bad snatchers, all these little wizards in bubbles and yada, yada, yada.
My teammate Ted built a Lumigits Realm-lords list. So yeah.
A brother from another mother. I think I've seen Ted's name around a little bit. I do know the name. Do you have any favorite command traits, or have you switched to Shaman of the Chiltland?
Shaman looked great, but with Lore Master and the extra battalion for another spell, we're looking spicy. Um, Venari ones are fine. I don't think we relatively need that extra command point. Sometimes I feel like have too many. Oftentimes, especially if I take my shrine, I'm like, oh man, I'm not spending, and I need to spend, spend, spend. Consummate warrior, you don't want anybody who's going to go out there and get in melee and die. So we don't really have that good fighter yet. We're waiting. I know we'll eventually get it when Tyrion makes his appearance, but we just don't have that solid fighter, and that still goes into Almighty Blow. Like, no, we're not doing it. Spellmaster, no. I mean, it's great to use Magical Boost when you want it, but there's no reason to have it once per battle. Like if it was like once per battle round, maybe there's some talk in there to try and get a cheeky spell off, but nothing beats Lore Master. Lore Master is fantastic. You get to take so many spells because a lot of people, especially when I was at Boise Cup, were like, your list is wrong. Like, how do you have 4 spells on your general? And it's like, well, it's like, how do you have a mix between the lores too? And I'm like, well, think about this. Lore Master specifically states I get to take 2 from the Lore Hish. So I commit those 2 to the Lore Hish. And then I am now delving my 1 into the Lore Frost. And then with my battalion, I'm delving into the same lore again, Lore Frost. So it makes sense. But yeah, that was a big red flag for a lot of players, especially the Corn player I faced. He was like, why do you have 4 spells? You can't do that. It's like, well, let me explain. Fast Learner is great for a Synthoi build. I think having 3 unbinds is fantastic, but I more or less think of Fast Learner in respects to my list as if I potentially can be on the second turn, I already have it. So if I win the roll off and I offer the turn away and I'm on the second turn now with the new Loki rules, forgive me, Coach, I don't remember exactly what that's called, where you get to pick a command point or a Loki to cast and dispel an extra spell. But I always pick my Lightner, especially only if it's like a heavy spell casting enemy army, and I've already got my 3rd unbind on a +4, so I'm happy about that. And we'll get to how I'm getting a +4 later, but great.
And I was going to ask you, because one of the burning questions is, how do you counter Seraphon? And anyone who's been on the receiving end of Techless, the Croak, the Slan, then you've got all the other spellcasters that can do damage. You run out of unbinds really quickly, and especially high quality where you've got an extra boost to it, or in this case with Fast Learner, you get the reroll. There might be some play, and maybe I take Fast Learner if I'm going to my local store and I'm playing against the local Seraphon player.
Sure.
But I probably tend to agree with you that Lore Master, knowing 2 extra spells, having versatility on the table. One thing I've really enjoyed this season is people waking up and realizing that Warlord or Command Entourage doesn't have to just be an extra artifact. You can take an extra triumph, and Git's players learnt this very quickly. Having double, basically inspiring presence became really valuable. Mm-hmm. Getting an extra spell or a prayer can also be valuable. And, for you, an extra artifact, you don't have a lot of killy heroes. That utility is probably worth more.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Especially when you get that 3rd cast with your Enlightener too, and you're like, I have, Mystic Shield in the pocket now. Yay!
It's good. Like, even like with my Gits, I've been basically, I'll have like a spell from my spell lore, and then I'll have a spell from the Lore of Frost. Having the utility to either debuff or be offensive, or even having redundancy where I've got double Hoarfrost or double Merciless Blizzard around the table. If I lose one threat, I've still got it somewhere else. And when you've only got it once, let's say Blizzard, it's like, cool, it's got to avoid this or handle this. But if I've got it multiple times, it becomes very hard, because you just have to accept that you're going to be in Blizzard range and you can't stop them all.
You can't stop them all.
Anything from the Wind Mage or the Stone Mage?
I think Fast Wind Chargers is fun, especially if you just want to get close to get your Hell on bonus. Sure. Swift is not hugely necessary for a General's move characteristic. I'm sure somebody could play with that. It's just you're not gaining a whole lot of value here. The once per battle again, I'm very much against once per battles. I just feel like it's not as effective. You need something that consistently has an effect on the table at all times. But now stone mages. So unyielding toughness. There's there's some rhyme and reason there. I don't currently use it myself, but having an extra wound, making your stone guard 3 wounds apiece on maybe a double stacked unit of 15, fantastic. Like try and move me. Good luck. Um, but like I said, it can be played around. So if your opponent notices it, they'll be like, well, why would I commit extra damage to that unit when I have these other options here? It can be played around. Can everybody do it? No. Can you get your stone guard in really inconvenient places for your opponent? Absolutely. But it can be played around, and I don't like that part. Enduring, no, you don't need an extra 3 wounds for anything. Tectonically attuned, within 3 gets an extra. I thought that was kind of fun for like Hellon builds. That was kind of cool. Give an extra geomantic blast back when Hellon was a little bit more degenerate.
Yeah.
That was great, but no, not anymore.
There was a window where that was hot, but yeah, Hellon changed a little, and then the battle cattle build kind of dipped off a little.
I'll shoot you 3 times a geomantic blast.
It was ridiculous. I will say though, like gravity defined champion, it does seem underwhelming. If that was like a +3 to run, like I re-roll 1 run roll, I don't care. Re-roll 1 charge roll can be clutch. Re-roll 1 casting roll can be helpful. But it's also for the general. Like I don't want to run my general. And if I did, I just make it a 6. I don't really want to charge my Wind Mage General.
Oh, I was going to say that. I was like, do you
why?
really want to charge?
So realistically, you're taking it for 1 re-roll to cast, which I don't think I need. Like,
no, you have your Aetherquartz, man. You got your tower. You got your re-rolls.
If that was important to you, yeah, you would just go to, is it Iliartha as well that can, do 2 Aetherquartz or...
Yeah,
no,
you got 2 out of that.
Good look at me. I know Lumineth. Any favorite artifacts still? Like Phoenix Stone always seemed popular. Rune of Senthoi seemed popular for a while. What else was popular builds? Waystone I used to see a few times on the board, but yeah, let me pass it over to you. What are your favorite artifacts in currently?
I think we are currently avoiding the Venari ones. Waystone's kind of cool if you wanted to, jet around a little bit. But largely, no. There's just so many better things to take. And one of those is being that Phoenix Stone. Like people who still like to run the techless build or rely on wanting to keep Eltharion around longer than normal, it's great to roll a 3 up. And, if you get it, great. It feels wonderful once per battle. If you don't get it, you feel real bad. But to have somebody commit fully to like techless and kill him and then him come back feels good. Silver Wand has a ton of play. Having an extra spell cast, I tell you, when I was brewing my current tournament list, I was so back and forth about, is Silver Wand what I want to take for my battalion or the extra spell? Like, what do I want? And I finally decided that I think spell versatility, especially when we get to that list, just paid off more. Rune of Senthoi. My man. Now that thing is nuts. Straight out the gate, because you have to tear through 40 wounds to get to my general anyway. So good luck stopping me. A +4 to unbind. Like if you bring enough Sonari, obviously. If you bring enough Sonari. +4 to unbind. Nuts. We were just talking about Seraphon, and I was like, okay, well, they lost the whole Oracle thing. So they can't be blasting you 4 times with Deliverance straight out the Oracle. So I have 2 on +4. Guess what I'm going after? Your Oracle's very first Deliverance and Comet's Call. I'm good now. So what are you going to do? Bring Croak closer to me? I have Blade Lords and Eltharion. How close do you want to get? You want to get within 18 inches? Okay, let's go. Like, let's do it. And a lot of people have. And Eltharion, I think, has like 3 croak kills on his belt. Like, bad. Runa Centoi, fantastic. In this GHB, saying no to people's spells on a +4, and if you're going second, 3 spells on a +4, nuts. And then we have our Shrine reroll if we don't want to use primals. So if you roll really, really bad, which oftentimes I have, I'll roll like a 1 or 3 and not meet it. And then I'll be like, okay, instead of primals, I'm just going to do my Shrine reroll on the Unbind. And then boom, there it is. I'm 12, 13. Really depends. Just feels great. Just feels really good. The Wind Mage, I was reading about this the other day and I thought it was funny, but if it happened every single, like if you could do it every turn of yours, on your turn, that there could be some play there. You could mess with a lot of things. Imagine yeeting your Wind Mage into like a huge brick and then forcing your opponent to pull out, and he can't charge you because he retreated. Like there's a little bit of play there. It'd be really mean to Giants, especially if they don't kill that Wind Mage for whatever reason, because you have to commit the Wind Mage. But if they don't kill it, your Giant is wasted for a turn retreating. So, but as a once per battle, okay, we're moving on. Windstone, another once per battle. I don't see any play there. Buffeting Aspergillion. No, we still don't see that there. It's nice to put subtract 1 from hit and wound rolls, but once again, who's got a Wind Mage that close?
And that's the challenge.
Who's got a Wind Mage that close? Stone Mages. See, now we're back to another good one. The Heartstone Amulet, probably not. We don't need that Ward of a 4 against mortals. If you're running a block, then you probably want to bring protection with you. Never leave home without protection in an Alarith list. Personal opinion. Molten Talisman. Damn, that's good. Alarith units wholly within 12? That's Stone Guard. That's Cows. That's a Valinor. Like, we're all benefiting from add 1 to wound rolls. Excuse me. We're wounding on 3s. So we're going to 2s. Like, this is reliable damage. So I think Molten Talisman in any Alarith list must have. Don't leave home without. Got to take it with you. Magma Hammer, please do not get your Stone Mage close enough to melee to try and make that work for you. Please don't.
I was just rereading it. +1 to the number of mortal wounds cast by Arcane Bolt.
Yeah, okay. Like, sling 2 at 12 or don't get too close. Don't do it. Don't do it, guys. The Stone Mage does not need a fight. He just needs to sit on his little stone floating in the air while everybody else does all the work.
Yeah, don't do that.
And he encourages them.
Don't do that. Don't do that at all. The Molten Talisman's an interesting one as well, because you're right. Like it's quite generous with a 12-inch, and you can, with the right combinations, get some good things in there to get all +1 to wound. And there's not many debuffs now to wounds, especially now that poor old Frost Phoenix is disappearing. And it means then you can put your Hoarfrost, instead of getting the wound down, you can put it on the Rend. So you've got all out attack for +1, or the Molten Talisman to get a +1 to the wound roll, and you boost it up Hoarfrost, or you put Hoarfrost somewhere else.
It's nuts good, brother. Nuts good. So I'm very excited to see Alarith showing up in the meta with these new rules.
I think the path is opening up for them, but I want to rewind really quickly before we go forward. You talked about the Light of Eltharion, and I've always loved this unit. And the reason I'm bringing this up is one of the questions that came up was the opinions. So this is a two-parter, right? And I think it's a loaded question. Is opinions on Gotrek or Gotrek, and why he should be an auto include in every order army. Now, I think this is a loaded question because you have a mini Gotrek in the Light of Eltharion. So do you take both? Do you take one? And if you took one, which one would it be? Over to you, Jarod.
Once upon a time, I called it a Gotrek and Phoenix list, where it was Gotrek and Eltharion, toe-to-toe together, hanging out. But golly, is Gotrek slow? And what, 500 some odd points? Golly. I mean, he does the damage. Does he do the damage? If you get him where he needs to go, he does the damage. But in our current meta, there's too many things that people could just throw into him and waste Gotrek for the rest of the game. And I think that that's what ultimately cuts him out of the picture, because I pay a fraction of the cost through Eltharion and get great damage output, great survivability, and just an overall amazing combat unit for a fraction of the cost. Like, I would never. I would say back in when Lumineth first came out, I played with Gotrek, and I had fun success at Hammerfest down in Texas. But the same thing, you can just tie him up, and there's your points. They're just sitting there. Like, you'll notice in my list, everything on average is like 250 or less points. And I love that, because that gives you so much versatility, so many different things to do, more units on the table. Gotrek just takes a chunk, man.
Yeah, Gotrek at the 500-ish mark, whatever it works out to be, is a large chunk. And look, in Seraphon or in some other armies, I think you can work around it. For you, what's the trade-off? And when you have a Light of Lotharian who's currently 230, I would almost just go with the
steal.
It's the greatest steal since Be'lakor got points reduction, and Be'lakor is a steal as well. But you can't take Be'lakor. If I could take a Light of Lotharian in my cities list, I absolutely would. It'd probably be my first choice. It's for 230. You're trading up. You're getting more value. You're getting more value out of the Light of Lotharian than what you pay for it.
Huge.
Yeah, it's got so many good rules. Like, I'm just rereading the rules.
God,
like,
he's so good.
For 230, it's so great. You're ignoring modifiers, making save rolls. You're halving damage from missile weapons. You're ignoring negative modifiers to hit. You're doing exploding sixes to hit. You are +1 to wound. Like, there's just so many. Mortal wounds do 6. With the fangs is 6s, cause mortal wound. You can be annoying to monsters and heroes. Like, it's just
like, what is there not to love about him? And like, take for example his perfect swordsman rule. You're fighting Karajan overlords. You're charging into a ship, and you're fighting the crew, and your opponent's like, "No, man, I'm in garrison. I'm -1 to hit." And I'm like, "My man, like, you cannot change this guy's hit. He's gonna hit you on 2s no matter what, and he's gonna slay the general sitting inside that ship, because there's nothing you can do about it. He's gonna hit you on 2s."
Ren 3 for 3, like, that just slaps. Yeah, you don't fight again at the end of the combat phase, but again, for 230, it's a steal.
It's a steal.
While we're talking about other like heroes we don't see very often, the twins, Eliana and Elathor, 190. Are they 190? Is it?
They took. I thought they were great at what they were, and then they took a price cut to 190, and I was like, you guys have to be smoking something. So now, in my personal opinion, I have 2 Lights of Eltharion, coach. I have 2. And people would be like, well, how? Well, not only do they have an inbuilt War Scroll 5-up ward, but if you, like I do in my list, if you give them Ethereal Blessing, they have a 3-up unrendable. Hello, Eltharion. And then, so for the first 2 turns, like how I run the 2 of these twins, because they're amazing, they get the Sonari keywords of Rune of Synthoi, but they play the Sonari role. So they're like throwing out like an endless spell for me, or doing some buffs. And then as the game continues, they're ramping it up and becoming Eltharion by turn 3. So with, an unrendable 3, if you can get it off, a 5-up board, if you can get it off, you have this monster that is extremely difficult to kill, because if you have your Blade Lords next door, Sonari keyword, you can pass off wounds to the Blade Lords. And there's a little bit of a cheeky trick here. You cannot do it unless you have the ward save. So if you have protection up or their War Scroll ability,
the Salvation of Hish.
Yes, if you have those up, that is the only way you can pick and choose wounds on the twins and be like, okay, well, I'm only going to stockpile 6. And then I'm going to throw the rest off to my Blade Lords. And then you roll your dice and the twins disappear and heal D6. And you're like, yay, you know, but that's the only way it works because per the rules, you cannot pick and choose passing off wounds to Blade Lords unless you have a ward save. So they're wound batteries for me. They're fantastic. I can't believe they're 190 points. I'm so glad to see this. I think when they first came out, Coach, they were like 300 some odd points, and everybody was like, I will never take those guys.
Yeah, they were 300. I remember looking at them and going, yeah, no, there's no way I'm putting 300 in them. But, you know, between the interactions with battle tactics, the points discounts, you know, yeah, look, you've really got to like use this piece because, as you said, it gears up throughout the game, and we know a lot of games are kind of determined by around turn 3, you know, 4 at the latest, but
absolutely.
really like turn 2, turn 3 is clutch. So how you get the most value out of them up until turn 3 is going to be critical on if that 190 points is well spent. But it does offer a lot of great value, and this is the challenge. You've got a lot of great choices. It's what slots into where and the tough choices that need to be made.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They've just done so much work. And because of that Blade Lord rule, even though they have 1 damage on that big sword, turn 1, I'm throwing them in combat. They're fighting. I don't care. They're fighting. And if they teleport away by any luck, I'm still in a point or something. Like, it's just great. They're awesome. I have never had so much fun with like a model like this. I think they're fantastic at 190. I don't want to say that they're a must-take, but I want to say they're a must-take. They're awesome.
They're
fantastic. And then when you're telling your opponent how much damage is that, and you're like, oh, that's 10 damage or that's 15 damage. And like, huh? I'm like, yeah, it's battle round 5. He's like, oh, it is battle round 5. It's like, yes, that's 15 damage.
Like, so wow. just to be clear and clarify for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about. So one of the melee weapons, so 4 attacks, 2s, 3s, Ren 2, and the damage is an asterisk, and the damage is that's the equal to the battle round.
Oh yeah, battle round number.
The battle round. So obviously battle round 3, that's 3 damage. That's a maximum of 12. If it's battle round 5, that's 5 damage apiece. So
good.
Very, very slappy. And they also generate extra command points, double unbinder and caster, and they get +1 to their casting, dispelling, unbinding. So there's a lot of, even if you can ally Lumineth, not a bad little independent piece that is worth considering.
Absolutely. And they mentor your general. So if you're playing Cities of Sigmar and you need extra CP on a 4-up, as long as they're within 3 of your general, you get a CP.
Yeah. New cities probably not so much, like because of the order mechanic, you probably aren't as hungry. But anyway, like this is not the cities discussion. This is the Lumineth chat. But it's a good call. If you need extra CP, bring it in. Happy days. Can't actually go into any order army. Isn't it some weird rule? Yeah.
Any order army.
Yeah, it has a weird rule. It's kind of like a mini Kronspine where it can be included as an ally in any order general. So
it just can't be your general.
No, you definitely can't do that. But you got a lot of spells to choose from, and I'm going to assume that a lot of the spells that were good before are still good today, whether it is, Speed of Hish, whether it's Protection of Hish, whether it's Total Eclipse, whether it is Howling Gale. Talk to me about your favorite spell choices, who, why, where. Like, what do I need to know about spells today, given that I can also choose Hoarfrost, Blizzard, and Rupture, so spells are in abundance.
Oh, yes, definitely in abundance here. Solar Flare is great. I love Solar Flare. I have it at least, I think it's on my Wardens. It's good when it comes up. I tried to use it against Tom and the zombies, and, it helped out a little bit. It's just an unreliable wave clear, and it's nice to have, especially if you have too many spells to take. Protection to Hish, fantastic. 5-up ward. If you get inside the shrine and you're measuring from the shrine, you just have all this range to protect your army if you're forced to go first, which we'll get to later. Overwhelming Heat, the combo with Gnashing Jaws, insane. Okay, I will half your movement to a 6 and then roll Jaws on 3d6, and anything over that is going to be damage on you on a 2+. Or you have a really bad movement characteristic, and you're down to a 2 or a 3, anything I roll over you on 3d6, re-rolling when you first bring it out, you're taking Immortals on a 2-up. Like, and I need to mention that 2-up a lot because, Coach, I cannot begin to tell you how many times I rolled a 1.
It's happened a few times to me and my opponents where it's just like this massive build up and you roll the 1 and you just cry.
It's like, this is going to be 18 damage. 1. Okay. All right.
Yeah. But although, like, it's also range 24, which is super generous, right? And the other thing that I like about it is, even if you didn't take Jaws, most armies have like a linchpin, that key buff piece, that key hero that they want to be in range, or they have something, right? If you have that, or even if it's actually a screen and you don't have a lot of flying, you have the movement on that particular key piece, and you might find either the army goes out of their buff ranges or they don't make that full advance because they need to be within range of that piece, which also means there's maybe less models on the objective. They've claimed less objectives, made their battle tactics harder. So even if without Jaws, it's a good spell.
Oh, huge. The utility there is fantastic. Giants, high speed armies, all of it. But the key here, everybody, because if you don't know it already, I just need to remind it because a lot of times Lumineth players don't. I've noticed that's wholly within 24. It's wholly within 24. It's not 24. It's wholly within. And so when you measure it out, you have to make sure every model in that unit is within range of that 24 inches. Ethereal Blessing, it's fantastic, especially if you're going into high rend. And there's a lot of that in like Iron Jaws. So my initial forward, like what I offer my opponent turn 1, I'll usually have Ethereal Blessing on against a high rend army on my Blade Lords right out the gate. Because I'm like, okay, I'm not getting a save no matter what I do anyway, because you're going to be rending me on 3. That's great to have in the pocket. So, don't leave home without, especially if you're running into a high rend situation or you're about to send somebody in to fight somebody with high rend. It's great to have. Total Eclipse, Lumineth is still out here causing people nightmares at night. Total Eclipse is mean. It really is. It's good. I'm glad the cost went up by 1. It's now a 9 value. That makes it a little bit less feels bad, but when that train gets running, it's tough. Like a lot of armies suffer immeasurably when they don't have their command points.
Yeah, and like it forces a lot of situations where people are now concerned about battle shocks. They need to reserve 2 command points that they now are not going to issue somewhere else. Where, I've seen this happen where the person fails the charge and they just can't afford to spend the extra CP to re-roll the charge because they still need it for battle shock. So you start making a lot of armies make really difficult choices, which is obviously great. Or it forces them to then do a heroic leadership to try to get the extra CP to offset that. So, like, it does manipulate and play with your opponent, and that's a good thing for you.
Yeah, it changes a lot. It changes the game state quick when it resolves. I purposely left the best for last. Non-Lumineth Realm-lords players, I'm about to share a secret. The rest of the Lumineth Realm-lords players are going to be like, Jarod, shut your mouth. But this is the most important spell we've got out of all those other ones. Speed of Hish.
Transporting Vortex.
No, Speed of Hish, bro. Speed of Hish is such a nightmare and such a reality check for players that they don't see it coming because it's just this hidden threat. Everybody's like, nah, I hate protection. Nah, I hate Total Eclipse. I'm going to commit everything to stopping that. And then they're like, how did you get in my face with all this? How did you do that? Oh, I just doubled the move characteristic. So that slow moving 6-inch guy is a 12. And they're like, dear God. It's like, yeah. And if I have an Enlightener, I just resolved it twice on a 3-up. And they're like, that is the spell I should have waited for, because now my biggest piece is about to get lightning reaction by 2 very choppy units that I didn't see coming.
Who are good recipients? Who are you want to put Speed of Hish on? Like, is it as obvious as putting it on the Dawn Riders to make them stupidly fast? Or is it, as you mentioned, that slow moving like Aetherquartz unit? Or like what's the source behind this spell?
So we're kind of getting into my list a little bit, but turn 1 recipient is going to be Severeth, and we'll get into that later. And then if it resolves twice, it'll be a Dawn Rider unit. It's never any of the main element. Reason being, I don't need it in the first turn. I'm not yeeting anybody up the table that is worthwhile on Battle Round 1. So Dawn Riders can go up, and if they set up, some chafe in the far corner to hold an objective, they're flying up the table 28 inches and hitting that really quick, and they're like, well, okay, wow, that's fast. And then Severeth is going his 48, which we'll get into later. But from then on, it becomes that instrument for the specific surgery and the operation. It's like, okay, I see you moved your piece over here. It's close enough. I'll measure it out. Okay, you're within range. 12 inches. I need a 5-inch charge. Then it's like, okay, speed of Hish, boom, Eltharion, boom, Blade Lords, let's go. Or speed of Hish, Blade Lords, speed of Hish, Ilani and Elithor, let's go. Like, it shifts like immediately when you get into Battle Round 2 and beyond.
I've quickly skipped to battle tactic because I just want to call this one out, and then we'll go back to where we were. Although I think we've kind of wrapped up spells for a second. Do you find Speed of Hish is really helpful for you to score Surround and Destroy? But given that, being able to like move out to the sides of the board, because you don't have that natural speed, and do you take 2 units of Dawn Riders to do it? Maybe some lists can't afford that luxury. But I imagine Speed of Hish is a great way to kind of bring them in, or when they're on the side of the board, then bring them back into the fray and get them where you need them to be.
So, Coach, I absolutely do that. So when I said I'm a limited castle, everybody's like, oh, you bring Dawn Riders to screen. No, I don't. I have not screened a single army that I've faced in this GHB with Dawn Riders. They are on the flanks, in position already. Excuse me. In position already, surround and destroy if I so choose in the first battle round if I'm ready and willing. Like, they're already there. They're on the corners. They're ready to go. I have them out of the way. Usually, roughly within 18 inches, obviously, for speed of Hish. But they're towards the corners already, and they're doing like they do in any type of pitched battlefield. The cavalry is going around the back and getting rid of all the, the chafe, while the main elements are fighting each other in the middle. So they're never around. They're on the left flank and the right flank, exactly where they should be in any type of medieval pitched battle,
Love it. No, I just wanted to call that out because it's a great way and maybe a consideration. I just had a chat with a Corn player, Blake, and he was talking about similar benefits, but having like things like Furies, bringing in some cheap allies, which kind of alludes to what you mentioned about the Canary. That's another great way of bringing in some cheap, fast chaff that could quickly score this battle tactic. Could be a screen, could be a nuisance, get into the backfield. And Speed of Hish, obviously, in your army, certainly not with Canary, would definitely synergize nicely.
Absolutely.
Anything else about spells? I think we've kind of covered it. I think the question is, what are you trying to do? You've got so many choices, so many wizard options. If you're dropping Techless, it means you don't know the entire spell lore. So some of the tough choices need to be made. And maybe Wide Magnificent, knowing an extra spell could be a much better choice than going 1 drop and limiting your spell with your spell choices.
Absolutely. I think in this GHB, we're totally safe not going, being a 1-drop anymore. We'll get into that. But as far as like the Huracan spells are concerned, Transmutating Vortex, great. We like, showing up places we're not supposed to be. Healing Zypher, if you want to keep Techless up, or maybe Eltharion. The Howling Gale is great, but God, you're within 12 inches. Ugh. And then the must take for Alarith, Unbreakable Stoicism. So good. It's so good. Make those guys mortal wound. I think it's in addition too, right? Yeah, they mortal in addition.
Is it?
I think so. I think.
Right. You keep talking. I'll have a look.
I think the Stone Guard work in addition. But you're doing it on 5s. Fantastic. Like, let's go. On a 7, sure. With Primal Dice now, reliable. We'll get there. Crippling Vertigo, we're just messing with like destruction armies, people with low bravery, Skaven, whatnot. It's great, to manipulate what people do. I think the Cathlar already fits that role fantastically. And then Living Fissure is kind of cool if you want to do some like mortal wounds in a line, but it's really not what you're taking. You're taking Unbreakable Stoicism. Like
and by the way, yeah, looking at Crushing Blow on the War Scroll as opposed to the spell, yeah, it's in addition. So
good, so good,
very, very nice. Although healing Zephyr, I know we don't have a lot of spells, but you talked about the Alarith, not the hero, just the monster version.
Yeah,
not
spirit.
The spirit, spirit of the mountain. You wouldn't be able to heal it with like heroic recovery. This might be a way for you to bring in a heal without paying for life swarm. But do you want to take a Hurricane Wizard to do so? Might be a tax too great.
Yeah.
Just take the Emerald Life Swarm, I guess, or accept that it's going to die. I'm going to ignore the fact that Wizard Finders of Antor are on this screen because, again, for you to not put a wizard in this battalion is probably going to be hard. Although you obviously can. Like if you want to build around like your Alarith, but I imagine the cream of the crop here and why you might want to avoid the battle reg, or at least go battle reg plus X, is Antorian Acolytes. This, to me, is such a good trade-off for being one drop. The Primal Magic dice is worth it.
Absolutely. I think you're not leaving home without this. Not only do you want to dominate your opponent's magic phase, you want to dominate your own. This is a fantastic battalion for Lumineth Realm-lords. Don't leave home without it if you can help it. People who have it and you don't, you're going to feel it. You'll feel it. It's fantastic. I can't say more other than don't leave home without. But I understand in some techless builds, it's extremely hard to do because you're committing so many points to heroes. You're already probably at $1,000 by the time you have two little Lokis and techless. But Wizard Finders does have play. So people who have been taking the list that I was running and like messing around with it, I saw a Banner Blade and 2 double stacked Blade Lords in this Wizard Finders of Antor. I like this. I think it's great. Will you always get an opportunity to get the extra attack on Perfect Strike? No, not all the time. Especially if your opponent is smart and knows that you have that ability to do so, which you should tell your opponent. You cannot gotcha your opponent with this. You have to be like, hey, I have Perfect Strike, which means 1 attack, 2 up mortal. But if I'm fighting one of your mages, it's going to be 2. So I'm going to be hitting you with, I think 10 is 11, 22 2-ups for mortals on a 10-man Blade Lord unit. Terrifying. And then people will just leave the Blade Lord like in the shrine or something like that and then call in his blast on the table like once per battle or do their thing. Get the rerolls to charge. That's fantastic. But there's play.
I know the theory sounds good, but would you actually take this to a tournament? Would you actually choose Wizard Finders over every other battalion that's available to you? I struggle to justify it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, even in a Gits build, I'm like, I've got too many heroes, but I still would go a Command Entourage. I would go this Antorian Acolytes. I would go for Battle Reg or Warlord. And already I've hit my hero cap and I'm done.
Yeah. Antorian Acolytes is the clear shot winner here.
Yeah. The minute that you play with an extra primal magic dice from your opponent, you see the benefit of this battalion. The amount of times where me and my opponent have failed the initial roll for a primal dice and then I've gotten 1 has given me advantage. Or we've both got 1 and I've got an extra 1. All of a sudden it's like, okay, well I've got 1 more extra dice to you, especially in unbinding where it's like, I don't have to worry about miscasting on an unbind. I can throw every resource I have at you where you've only got 1 tool and maybe you've only got that 1 dice to get Blizzard off and 3d6 average.
You don't?
Average of 3d6 is a 10 and having that extra primal dice would have tipped you over.
Yep. Don't leave home without. Don't leave home.
So you would argue that this you either would go Battle Reg and Antorian Acolytes, or other combination, like, in most lists or in a good list, you would see benefit not just going pure 1-drop, and the Antorian Acolytes is worth going to 3-drop at minimum.
I'll be honest with you, Coach. This is how I see it. You either 1-drop or you all the drops. I live by that. I live by that creed on everything. I'm either 1-drop or I'm all of them. Because when you commit to the 1-drop and you have an opponent who's got the 1-drop, what's the bonus here? You guys got a dice roll that's going to determine whether or not you're going to get something great. And then you have the vice to that, which is being all the drops, and you get all these additional goodies. You get acolytes, you get extra spells, extra artifacts. Why not dig into the goodies? Dig into the goodies while the time is good. So you're either 1-drop or you're all of them. That's just my stance.
Yeah, that's fair.
I can't fight for a 2-drop or a 3-drop, because if somebody's a 1-drop, they got you, bro. They got you.
I agree. I've always been, I don't care about drops. I am what I am. I'm warlording. I'm commanding, entouraging. I'm getting
all the goodies.
I'm getting extra. I would much value that over all the 1-drop, because I'm never trying to alpha you in turn 1. I'm never trying to. I don't care who goes first, who goes second.
Yeah, I don't care.
You give it to me, I'll do these things. If you take it, I will do these things. Like, I don't care about going first.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'd say Lumineth Realm-lords are arguably one of the most defensive armies on getting forced to go first. So.
Do you think that's changed a little bit when Sentinels kind of lost some of their output? Because, like, you used to see a lot of, like, 1-drops, and, Sentinels would drop a whole bunch of damage, from long range before I got a chance. You put up your Cathalar things. You've really, like, impacted me before I've rolled the dice.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the Sentinel changes, it made a huge impact, but I think the survivability portion of it has stayed the same. So being one of the best defensive armies for being forced to go first, I think still remain the same. But to your point, that would have been best defensive armies along with an ability to really hurt you. Really bad, like right out the gate. Oh, I'm going to make you go first. Well, now I'm completely buffed, and that's a nice unit you got there. That I don't remember what that old spell was called. That was horrific, but you got to re-roll your hits against the target.
Yeah, you cast the Umbral spell portal, get it through the portal, and And
then so you re-roll your hits on a 30 block. It's like, oh god. So yeah, I think still remain, even with the changes, one of the most defensive armies to get forced to go first. So we don't care. We don't care.
If you're a 1-drop person listening to this, I hope you have now some confidence to maybe look outside of 1-drop. It's still great. Like, don't get me wrong, but have a plan on what you want to do. I just think there's a lot of great benefits, even if it's like double extra spell or an extra triumph or an extra artifact. Like that, those things to me are more valuable than 1-drop. But maybe you have something different in your build. Any favorite grand, without going through all of them, like, do you have a favorite grand strat? Is it spellcasting Savant? Have you swapped over, or are you sticking in the Lumineth side?
Good luck killing my general when you have to tear through 40 wounds of Blade Lord spellcasting Savant. Yes, thank you. So good. So good. But on the Alarith side, obviously, I love Alarith Aftershock. If you got tabled, you got tabled. You don't deserve a grand strat anyway. But if you didn't get tabled, then you for sure got a couple extremely survivable units to benefit from Alarith Aftershock. So great. But those are two of the main ones. Don't leave home without, depending on what you're playing.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. I'm not seeing a lot of Hurricane units on the board, so I probably wouldn't be doing Cyclone. Scenari in Illumination, meh. I mean, that just feels like a much more restrictive version of Control the Nexus. Oh, no, Control the Nexus, sorry. What is it? It doesn't matter. Like Baron Icescapes or Control the Nexus, like I'd rather, those seem a bit easier than the keywording into Scenario Illumination.
Yeah.
All right. Seems pretty obvious. Spellcasting Savant and or Alarith Aftershock. Any particular favorite battle tactics? Like, again, without going through all of them, because I think we could be here for 10 years talking about them. Are there ones that you find you use more than others, whether it's from your book or whether it's from your GHB?
Absolutely. So Lumineth Realm-lords were, for our bad win rate, because everybody's saying all the armies at the top are the ones with the best battle tactics. Well, we have those too, depending on how you build your army. We're very well taken care of. Like you have so many options straight out the gate. You got the Hishmade Manifest, especially if you're multiple drops and your opponent drops out before you. You can drop 30 inches out, making sure you can get your 2 endless spells going. We could do the cast. I think it's cast 4 with or cast. Where is that? Cast 4 with
blind the enemy. You control.
Yeah, cast 4 with 4
different
units. Great. You can unbind me. I don't care. I still get it if I'm successful. You know, and then, you know, as magical dominance, we have that too. If you, that's matchup dependent because you really don't just want to have one spell to cast, but oftentimes I'll deploy in such a way where actually most of my, depending on the mission, of course, most of my casters are actually outside of 30 inches of my opponent, especially if they drop before me. So magical dominance, you see, you already have 3 and it's turn 1. Like, come on. And then as the game progresses, you have the old, which one is it? The ignore the odds for when you're fighting in combat, and you just need to destroy a unit. So, you know, kill something, conserve Aetherquartz, kill a unit, don't use your Aetherquartz. Like, golly, we're sitting so good in this edition. So good. I never have done magical mayhem to kill somebody off with magic. I don't trust it enough. I wish I did, but my specific list does not have extreme offensive spells. Led into the Maelstrom is fantastic. You get your double speed of Hish. Most of the units in my list are all battle line, except for like 1 unit of Dawn Rider. So fantastic. Surround and destroy. Like, Coach, we're solid. Like, if you're struggling on tactics, it's because you built a list that would intentionally remove a lot of these options from you, which Alaris suffer from to some degree.
Yeah, I feel like you have quite a generous offering, and
it's too generous. It's so good.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's too generous. You're not like Zinch and some of the, like you're not Daughters of Cain, where it's like
right.
If you turn up, you get 5 out of 5 battle tactics.
Right.
You very much
fail. You can still fail these.
And you know what? Things like Bait and Trap could be perfect for why you take 2 units of Dawn Riders. You know, there's so many good options here. I think, you know, Reprisal, if it happens, it happens. But let's not try to get our general dead if we possibly can, which kind of leads into your list. So we've alluded many times to we're sneaking into our list. We'll get to our list. Well, here we are. We're at the list. So this is your Salt Lake list. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. This is the one I've been running all GHB.
Cool. So for the people listening in audio form, I'll read it out, and then you can maybe explain some of the combinations and how it works and what do I need to know about this list. So you got your Cathalar with the Total Eclipse and Hoarfrost. Probably worth calling out, folks, that there is a Warlord here with the spell enhancement, so you'll see double spell on a lot of things. So Cathalar has Total Eclipse and Hoarfrost. Enlightener is the general, is the Lawmaster with the Rune of Senthoi, with Hoarfrost, Blizzard, Speed of Hish, Protection of Hish. That's right, 4 spells. You have the Light of Ortharian. You have the Twins. You have the Eleanor and Elthor with Ethereal Blessing and Overwhelming Heat. You have Severeth. You have 2 units of 10 Blade Lords, a unit of 10 Wardens with the Total Eclipse and Solar Flare. You have 2 units of 5 Dawn Riders with Overwhelming Heat, Speed of Hish. You have Gravetide. You have the Hishian Twin Stones and Ravenashing Jaws. 1980 Entorian Acolytes and Warlord. Talk to me. How's this work? What do I need to know about this list?
Okay, let's start from the top here. So Cathalar is extremely important. I feel like it just outright shuts down a lot of matchups for you through Darkness of the Soul. So if you're up against low bravery armies, especially with the fact that you're frisbeeing your Aetherquartz within 18 inches to enemy units and making them a permanent -1 bravery as Aetherquartz is being expended across the battlefield, you are shutting down those units from acting. And I think the worst thing I've ever done to somebody, I think it was one of the Trentinelli brothers. I felt so bad. He had like 6, he had the double stacked. What are the ogres from Skaven that have all the guns?
Yeah, you're Storm Fiends, or as I
Storm
call
Fiends.
them, Storm
So he had that
Friends.
Storm Fiend like maxed out build. And when Darkness of the Soul hit, that's 600, and I think it was 680 points of his army on a bravery 5 or a 6. It was so bad. It was like 2d6, okay, they can't do anything. 2d6, okay, they can't do anything. He's like, this is BS. I was like, yeah, I know.
As a squeak player, that terrifies me.
Yeah, like,
Their bravery is 3 natively.
So you become a 2 with an Aetherquartz? I just don't leave home with this one. If you want to shut out certain matchups, she reacts to that. She's walking with the castle already. She cannot be outright sniped because of the Blade Lords. She moves forward. She denies certain armies from getting away with things. Enlightener, crucial to the build, usually takes the shrine turn 1. I like to set her up. So I have the shrine pretty aggressive, but enough to be where my Enlightener is set up 30 inches away from all enemy heroes and wizards, like outside of 30, but within 6 inches of the shrine. So when I'm forced to go first, I'm able to get my spells off and then also jump in my shrine and blow out my my defensives. And I like to place that shrine right between 2 objectives, or if that's what the mission offers you, or somewhere close to the center where you have multiple options, and I have it well measured to where I can stand near them and still get protection if I need it. Fantastic. She protects you when you start moving out of the tower and start taking the midfield with the rest of your Blade Lords, because she's got the protection of Merciless Blizzard. Fantastic. And the utility of Speed of Hish to, like we talked about earlier, send 2 units out there, catch your opponent off guard. You're already midfield. You're going to be able to respond to things. A lot of Eltharion. Me and Coach went into this like crazy. He's fantastic. He's just like Gotrek. I like to keep him. I get cheeky with him sometimes. So if I know I'm about to get alpha struck, I will set him up to where, with the Blade Lords, which we'll also get into that, but I like to set him up at just the right amount of inches that when somebody tries to commit to what I offer my opponent in deployment, that once they blow out a few units, like a couple or 3 Blade Lords, Eltharion is going to be able to respond. He's going to be able to jump into the fray and fight. He's not standing by himself. He's there. He's ready. He's going to fight. And a part of this combo that I run is, it's a lot like 300. It's crazy. I have the 10 Blade Lords, and this is what I offer most of my opponents turn 1, while also navigating my shrine to create bottlenecks. But I'll do Blade Lords. Oh, here we go. Blade Lords. And then right behind them, I'll have my spears, because we have 3-inch range. So when we get charged, like Alpha Struck, because they're attacking what I offered them, because this is all I'm offering them, they're not only hitting Blade Lords, but they're getting speared over the back by Wardens. And if you have, I can't really explain it without drawing it, but if you have Eltharion in just the right spot where he's not going to just take a charge and take a bunch of mortals and die, but to where he can respond to combat as it unfolds, it's such a pain for your opponent, because you're like, okay, I'm going to fight you. Great activation. You killed 5 of my Blade Lords. Great job. 10 wounds. Awesome. All my defenses were up. All of my all-out defenses. But now I'm going to respond to you with spears that are taking those positions that just opened. Eltharion. I'm on the best spear profiles, because you charged the spears too, because you were within 3 inches. You charged them too. And then the Blade Lords as well. And it's just like, it's such a detriment to your opponent, because they're like, well, shit, like, excuse my language, but here we are. Like, now we're fighting way more than I bargained for, and that's all you gave me. That's all you offered me to fight. So that's the main thing for like Lad of Eltharion. Align and Elthor, they fit the similar role. They're with the other set of Blade Lords that I have that roll out on the other side. So I kind of fan them out, but stay within the shrine. not offer my opponent a chance to get into the shrine to like outright kill my Enlightener. They really can't, because as long as you keep your Blade Lords on turn 1 within 3, at least one of them within 3 of that shrine, you can pass off wounds. So great utility there. Now here's the spice. So I'm hoping people who play me in the future don't listen to what I say.
Just
right here.
So, folks, if Jarod, just forget what Jarod's about to say.
Forget what I'm about to say.
If you're planning to play a GT, you've got to stop this video right now and come back to
Yeah.
we've made this general agreement. People have put their phones down, but please continue. Give me the
All right.
spice.
Here we go. So Severith is insane to this new GHB as well. So what we got here is we've got your Antorian Loki killer. Cut and dry. And most opponents cannot set up their armies in such a way to stop this from happening how it does. So when I already told you guys that I set up that Enlightener outside of 30 inches of my opponent, they're not unbinding my spells because they gave me the first turn unless they decided to go first, which is fine for me. I'll have a 3-cast general for the rest of the game, potentially, if I can win priority. But they don't. They always make me go first. I always go first. So Severith gets Speed of Hish, and I will aggressively put him up there. Like, he'll already be like almost on the deployment line. Maybe. It just depends. Like, unless you know your opponent could alpha strike you and hit him. I give him Speed of Hish, 48 inches. He flies at the board. He flies at the board and flies over the Loki. 3 up, D3 mortal wounds. So he flies over the Loki. He's putting maybe on average 2 mortal wounds on your general or Loki before the going gets tough. And then he lands with that 48 inches, because you just have so much room. It's not even funny. 12 inches away. And I would argue that most of you guys should probably angle that never come straight back to your main army. And the reason for that is when you're playing against your opponent, he already wants to bring his main element into your main element. So retreating back to your main army is a huge mistake, because he's already going that way. He, she, or whatever, is already going that way anyway. So you need to make it extremely inconvenient. So what I do is, if I'm hitting a unit, I'll have him go off. I'll offset him 12 inches away. So then when you, and he's getting Finest Hour turn 1, which makes most opponents be like, what? Yeah, he's getting Finest Hour. Yeah, for sure. And so, because you can wound on 2s, hit on 2s. So then you go to your shooting phase, and on average, everybody, you should kill a Loki. On average, your dice could betray you. It happens all the time. Rolling 1s is a thing. But on average, 2s and 2s, 4 shots, D3 damage, -3 rend. Most Lokis do not have the save to survive that. And they already may have taken wounds on the flyover. So you take the shots. If you nail the Loki, which a lot of times it's like, say for like one of my Chaos matchups, I went after the Sorcerer, who has a crappy save and not a lot of wounds, and he's the general of most Baron Guard armies. He's dead on the very first turn. And your opponent's like, okay, I don't have a general and we just started the game. And then it gets worse. You do not fully commit Severith. I have a rule of thumb that everybody really needs to listen to me here. Never commit Severith until you have bought his points back. You will play the savior game with him until you have killed enough points to actually make him do weird things around the table, like blow up terrain or scour terrain and start messing with stuff and flying around the table and using his 6-inch pylon when he charges to mess with stuff. Don't do that until you get his points back. So now that it's the end of your shooting phase, he's going to bolt an additional 12 inches back. So he's already at 11 7/8 when he shot that general.
I was literally about to call this out. So even though the shooting attack is a range 18, you need to be within 12 to ignore Lookout Sir. So, yes. Well, you still get the -1 penalty to hit. So you'll need to issue all out attack to get it back to 2s. But if you're going to shoot an Antorian Locus and it's near a unit, you're going to have to be within 12.
Within 12, yep.
So as you mentioned, 11.9 or something, right?
Yes. So you'll be at 11 7, or yeah, 11.9. And then you're going to take that additional 12-inch move, and you're going to further that distance to the edge of the table from your initial target. And the
So
reason for that is
going back. We're going backwards. Or we're
no,
going
not going
towards you.
backwards. You're gonna go straight to the corner. More corner of the table, like right over here. When your target was like right here, you're gonna go over down here.
Okay,
The
so
reason,
you're moving away from them.
yeah, you're making it inconvenient for your opponent to chase. And that's the main point here. That's why you never retreat to your main element. You never come back to your main army. You take a corner. You go left or you go right. And you're fighting your way that direction because now your opponent is faced with a new problem. He has to commit a fast-moving unit to go find him. Whereas if you were to just go back to your main army, then he's just going to come towards you anyway, so he's happy. But now you have to commit something to somebody who's running onto the corner of the table and is still going to cause problems because he's moving 24 inches if he doesn't have speed of Hish. Oh, wait, I have 2 Dawn Riders on both sides already. So what do they have? Speed of Hish. So if I really needed it again, it's already on lock and ready to go. That's why I thought it was fantastic just to bring, as their extra spell, Speed of Hish. Why not? Because my spirit is already over there. So he can go to the next place he needs to go, fly over the next person and start, racking up Loki kills and hero kills and whatnot and get the ball rolling until he makes his points back. Huge. Severith is amazing. He's fantastic. This GHB made him even better. He's so good. And I look forward to a lot of people, running him and just crushing Lokis and heroes on foot all day. It is so good. And then scouring terrain in the late game. But yeah, a lot of word vomit there, everybody. But most opponents they don't even want to deploy in such a way to make this not happen to them. It's so tough to do. Like, you have to be so cagey, so wrapped around to just try and deny Severith from nailing your Loki. Or not even, you don't even have to be so close. You have to be so fanned out from everything. Like, it's just tough. It's very tough. Severith will find a way. He's got 48 inches. He'll find a way. So
Severith with Speed of Hish can be a pseudo KO type of shoot you off the board and take out that linchpin, right? And there's a couple of things, like Severith's points got reduced to a level now that is worth reconsidering. Yeah, you can't move in both turns, but most armies also can't chase Severith down, to be honest. It's like chasing the magical dragon. Like, you will just never get to it. So either you ignore it, which works in your favor, or for most armies, it will be a challenge to chase down. And look, once they get Severith, they'll kill it. But getting it is the challenge, right? So unless you've got long strikes, you've got double shooting bow snakes, or you've got something that has a good amount of damage at range, it's going to be very tough. And most people just ignore Severith. But one thing I want to call out as well here is that when I look at this list, it's not the traditional Lumineth Castle. Like, you have so many independent threats that will spread across the board like a very traditional army that really works in your favor. Then you layer the Twin Stones to get some extra magic happening. You've got the Gravetide to get to the hordes. You've got the Gnashing Jaws in combination with Overwhelming Heat to do quality damage to when you've reduced the movement characteristic. A lot of cool pieces going on. We've already talked about the twins. We've already talked about the Light of Eltharion. If I was your opponent, I look at this. This is a much harder list to crack because cool. I go take out the Light of Eltharion, or I focus on Severith. You've got so many other things that I'm going to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big key point here, everybody, is Hisshin Twin Stones is nuts, especially if you like to cast Blizzard. It's so good. It just starts racking up until it maxes at 6, and you just throw it right into Blizzard, and you're getting it without your primals if you don't have primals. So, because you just need if you're in Zytrek, you just need a 5 on 2d6, because if that's maxed up to 6 already, there's Blizzard.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I like it, and I like some different combinations. I really do like this because I haven't seen the Light of Eltharion for ages. I've never seen the twins on the table. Anything else to call out? I really do like this list, and I see why you got success, and I also see why some people probably struggle to handle this because you have many threats. You've got some defensive pieces in the Wardens as well that can sit on objectives. You've got some really good movement. You've got some killy pieces. You have some tools to disarm an opponent, as you mentioned, Sethereth, for an example. And you got some debuffing pieces. And the Cathalar, I hate the Cathalar.
Oh, so good. I
Like
say, go ahead.
No, I was just say the Cathalar is like my Wargog Prophet in Lumineth. Like I just look at it, I just roll my eyes. I'm like, I know
Stay
I'm
away
ready.
from that.
I know I'm ready for a bad time. Like I'm like, all right, I'm gonna avoid you.
Yeah, I'd say the only last little shout outs here is overwhelming heat on Alani and Elithor is a great way to set yourself up for a combo if they teleport. So if they do teleport, you can teleport close enough to, because they're 2 cast, to overwhelming heat and then Jaws as a combination. So if they do teleport away, you can set them up in a good advantageous position to do a Jaws combo. And then it's also offered to you with your Dawn Riders on the flank. So you're out there, you have the opportunity. Go for it. And the last hidden tech piece I wanted to say about this list is the other reason for the Dawn Riders to have Speed of Hish, other than just maybe helping Severeth, is if you do the double Speed of Hish to overcommit to something with your units, the Dawn Riders can Speed of Hish those guys back in. So that's another big reason why I do that, is because the Dawn Riders are already out here in the corners. And so if I overcommit Eltharion and he's way out in Egypt, then he can get Speed of Hish from the Dawn Riders and make his way back in.
And that's probably one of the challenges a lot of armies have, is getting back in from Surround and Destroy, back into the fray without losing a turn. But Speed of Hish really complements you to get them into the fight and, again, still make the most of your units.
Absolutely.
I love it. Any final comments before we go in and preview a different build? All right. Cool. So this is the second list, a little bit more of a Alarith build with your Metrica, but we still see some of the key pieces we've talked about. So there is still, the 2 units of 5 Dawn Riders, but you've introduced a Stone Mage with the Molten Talisman and the Unbreakable Stoicism. You've got an Enlightener, which is the General, which is the Lore Master with Blizzard, Speed of Hish and Protection of Hish. You've also got Avlanor, the hero name Spirit of the Mountain. 2 units of 10 Stone Guard, a unit of 5 Blade Lords. You've got the Alarith Spirit of the Mountain as well. So you've got double Battle Cattle or Beefer of Secrets. You've got yourself a Gravetide still. Drop the Twin Stones, but the Gravetide is such great value for 30 points. It's ridiculous, the base size and the value you get from Gravetide. It is 1990, wrapped up in the Antorian Acolytes and a Battle Regiment. So how does this list differ? And does the archetype change? Like, is it much more defensive? Is it much less combat-y? Like, how does this list compare to the other?
So I want to touch base on Suffocating just real quick, and then yes, I will absolutely let you know which one that is. So the coach had a point there. The base size is huge. Think about that when you take like Ravnak's Jaws and Suffocating Gravetide. That's a lot of area denial, and I use that a lot for area denial. So if you do have openings in your army, you either force your opponent to try and unbind it, or you can deny area. Never forget that. Denying area is huge, and it's great within the spells. But anyways, this list functions more or less like a more solid shield than my last one, because you have more survivable units in the core. And I'm still doing the same thing. The Dawn Riders are taking their corners, but I have that little cheeky Total Eclipse, so my opponent has to like commit something to try and stay in unbind range as the cavalry's moving up the flanks. And then I have the Antorians in here, so if I have primals, I can reliably try and hope and get Total Eclipse off on the edge. That's why both Dawn Riders have it. So if I'm like, oh look, you're not within range over here, then Total Eclipse, let's go. Most people are like, I can't fit Total Eclipse into an Alarith list. Well, here you go. This also offers the Alarith list that Surround and Destroy. That's extremely important because Alarith is very slow. So you have the options there, and I know a lot of people are like, how does your battle line look like that? But just so everybody knows, if you don't know already, if you bring a Sonari hero, you get 1 Blade Lord as battle line. So that's why we have 2 sets of 10 Stone Guard and a 5 Blade Lord. So how this army really functions is the core stays in this is your castle. This is a castle. It moves forward nice and slowly. It finds an opportunity to double Speed of Hish if it needs to. Your opponent does not want to charge into you because you have Antorian Acolytes and Merciless Blizzard ready to go. If primers are looking hot, you can bust somebody really bad for charging your army, and then your spirits also get bonuses to being charged to get an extra attack on their melee weapons when you charge them. So they're just loving it. This is your everyday move forward with, 2 10 stacks, 2 spirits, and Cenarian Lightner in the back, protecting within that 12-inch bubble of Merciless Blizzard. And you have the Blade Lords on lock to help you mitigate some of that Blizzard hate that you get if you roll a 1. And then if you're worried about the other objectives with fast movers, you got your Dawn Riders out there. You got nothing to worry about. You got your Dawn Riders ready to go. Now just send this big, beefy missile right into your opponent. Just straight in there. You're getting all the bonuses from Unbreakable Stoicism and Molten Talisman, +1s to wound. You get bonuses from the Stone Mage for, I think, for not charging, obviously, or moving, which adds, no, it makes it so the Stone Guard, if they don't pile in, they get a bonus as well. So with all these things combined, you just have this very, don't try and charge me because I'm going to hurt you really bad, and then I'm going to get into you at some point, and I'm going to continue to hurt you really bad. So it basically just functions like that. The core goes down the middle. You take on your opponent's army. You fight it out. A Valinor is extremely hard to kill because now he ignores 1 rend, 2 rend, all-out defense, finest hour, mystic shield, Aetherquartz. I think I got to 7 when I mathed it out once. But who in the world has -6 rend? Coach, who's got -6 rend out there?
IDK has a Ren 5. Doesn't
okay,
IDK...
we're close. We're getting somewhere.
I'm pretty sure, unless they've changed the artifact, I swear there is a Ren 5, like a sort of like Mathland or something, or unless it's the old book that I'm thinking about. But I remember there's some ridiculous Ren 5. But other than that, yeah, that's overkill. You clearly do not do a stack of +7.
Yeah, what? Good luck. He's so hard to take down. He really is, especially if you have protection up. So hard to take down now with these new rules. It's fantastic. I'm happy to see it. I hope to see more mountain players on the table. I'm not really a mountain player, I'm going to admit it. But I look very forward to it because there's so much play here, and it looks fantastic, and it's so hard to shift. So hard to shift.
They are. Like, I've played into them a few times, and it is hard to handle the Stone Guard, especially when you've got your wards up, your Avalanor, having 2. I do like having 2. And by the way, folks, if you're wondering like why 10 Stone Guard or 130, it's just the app. The app is dumb. It's actually 260 for 10. The points are correct in the full list. It's just that for some reason, when you reinforce, the app is currently not showing the full. For some reason,
app is weird.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, but I like it. Like, it is much more of a defensive piece. It is much more castly, and I like the fact that you put the Enlightener behind those Stone Guard. One, lifting them is already hard, but when you come in range, I'm going to blizzard you off the board. So
you
create this ball of death that I want to ignore, all while your Dawn Riders are moving around the board, your Spirits of the Mountains, supporting and moving, and like there's a lot of really nice pieces that you've got a lot more board control from those 4 pieces, while keeping a good core in the center.
Absolutely.
Anything else in this list? Like, I dig it. I am sad there's some things that just still don't get to see play, but no, it's not. It's not on you. It's just Stormcast syndrome, where there's too many units and too many competing for the same type of role, right? Like, what's it going to take to see a Ballista in the list, and what's it take to go and see the old what's the banner person, the old Banner Blade? Oh, I'm yet to see a Banner Blade on the table.
I know. Gosh, would it be nice?
Makes me sad, Jarod. But we are going to go through some rapid fire questions, and then the ones that we haven't acknowledged. So first off, what do you think the army is lacking to be competitive again?
Lacking?
Or do you
think they're competitive, man. I think they are.
Let me finish my question. Or do you disagree with that statement?
I disagree. Absolutely. I disagree because I think we just have a place. It just takes us to look at Lumineth Realm-lords differently than what we're used to. We're used to just writing on Teclis's back. And now if we just take a deep look at the book, you guys will find your place here. Like, there is so many great combos. We have a place in this meta. We just need to put in the elbow grease.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is a good demonstration of the last 2 odd hours we've had. Another question that I'm going to change the question, because the question I don't like. So Ken from Facebook had mentioned, are there any good competitive lists that are not Archer spam? And we've already just demonstrated two. We've literally just demonstrated two. So my question that I'm going to reframe for our friend Ken is there still a place for Archer spam, whether it is a block of 20, a block of 30, 2 blocks of 20? Given that we are fighting castles, do you see a use for the Ballista Sentinel combo still?
Absolutely. I think there is certainly an argument to be made for the Ballista. There's still monsters in our meta, and it's nice to rend 2 flat 3 damage them. It does hurt a little bit when their damage doesn't happen. I still think they're slightly overcosted at the moment, but Sentinels are very overcosted, and they need to be. And the reason I say that, Coach, is because I think missile weapons need to be hated on a bit. And the reason for that is it makes a more interactive game for players, and I understand that. I mean, even in medieval times, it probably seemed very what was the longbows versus the French? What was that? The Battle of Agincourt? Like it makes a very uninteractive battle because you're putting so many arrows into your opponent, and that a lot of people don't like that. There's some feels bad there, so they could come down quite a bit, but they need to stay relatively expensive because we just don't need to be in a shooting meta. Cities is coming out now with a big shooting meta. But yeah,
your bravery shenanigans is going to make them feel like I'm a Gits player. I hate your bravery shenanigans.
I'm a Gits player.
I'm also a Cities player. I hate your bravery shenanigans. So that's probably where you probably lean into a lot. And either I got crappy movement, I got crappy bravery. You got some tools there to handle my cities as well. So that scares me.
Yeah, for the points cost, Coach, Sentinels are they're out.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I think they're paying for the sins of the past right now. They were too
Absolutely.
good for too long. But long strikes are kind of dropped off the bat. There's a few things I think as shooting mechanic probably needs to change so we don't get these crazy blowouts. But hey, KO is running around, and I think probably your comments around Severeth has kind of shown that maybe it's not Sentinels, but rather actually Severeth. And I really like the movement that you talked about. I love the shenanigans. And even if you're not just zipping over them to do damage, being able to pick them out, the Ren 3/3 attacks, being just inside of 12, there's some...
So good.
That is spicy. Spellcasting Zavant is going to be hard to avoid. Any of these critical like Blizzards and Hoarfrosts, or even Antorian. If someone's got Antorian Acolytes, remove one of the two. If they've only just minimum met the battalion, they lose the extra primal dice. That Severeth, love it.
So good. Please don't use it against me if you see me in a tournament, please.
Well, I mean, I could bring a Severeth into my cities, I think. I think we can Lumineth.
I think so. That's the right amount of points. We have a 400-point allotment?
Yeah, no, I was just more thinking because I do have the Settlers Gain, which is the Lumineth city.
Oh, yeah.
Couple of other, I got a narrative there. Like, I'm a narrative player. I can bring my Severeth into my cities with my Fusiliers.
I love that.
Maybe my idol Severeth along with all my flagellants and the Pope. What about allies? Like Jace was saying, things like Tree Lord, Tree Rev, Stormdrake, the new Questor, Soul Sworn, Chariots. Like, would you bring in a Mega Gargant? How do you think allies and what's the role maybe that an ally could fill into a Lumineth list? I think that's the better question, right? Because there's a lot of choices, but what's the role we're trying to fill?
So the role we're trying to fill is unpredictable movement, and that's just personal feeling. I mean, other people will probably look at it differently, but that's why I consider the Tree Revenants. I liked unpredictability of your opponent being forced to commit his assets to making sure you can't just steal something from him, and that can be rather huge. That's why the Cannerai are great, because I think their lowest costed one is like 90 points, coach, or somewhere around there. The melee ones are like 90 points or something. Was for such a low cost, your opponent, if he's playing a hyper elite army, has to commit something way too expensive just to make sure you don't show up behind him and steal his objectives from him, or this or that. So I think there's still a rhyme and reason there, but we have really cheap units in Lumineth. We have really cheap units that are fast. So absolutely, I think we could branch out into allies, but you'd probably feel safe at home with just pure Lumineth.
Yeah, I mean, like Cannerai, a good example, 100 points for the shooty ones, and also can move after shooting, so that could help you in certain areas. But, tree revs, I think, another good example. I think the question is like, what are you trying to fill in? What's the gap that you can't currently fill in? And it might actually be combat. Like if you think that you don't have enough combat prowess, then maybe, or you know what, you need like a big wound sink. Yeah, maybe the Gargant Bundo Whalebiter could be something.
Whalebiter.
He's 35 wounds of fun that will just pin you in and let you do your thing. But I think to your point, like you've got too many great choices, and you're probably natively better to stay in-house. But maybe Tree Revs or Cannerai would be two that maybe I would lean into.
I saw an argument, coach, for the that item that Deepkin melee tide guy. Who is that? They have their spirits of the water, I call them. But there was an argument there that
the Eidolon. The Eidolon,
yes!
there's the combat Eidolon, and then there's the magic Eidolon.
I think it's the magic one, actually. I think there was an argument there that the magic one might be good as an ally, or it was the combat one. I don't remember, but I'm definitely looking into that right now and trying to do some considerations.
See, my argument to you, or my counter to you, would be I would look at the Sharks over the Eidolon, because the Shark, with their shooting attack, if they hit, they stop you from piling in. So there's another shenanigan there.
That's pretty good. I don't like getting piled in on. That's like old Fox shenanigans.
It's an independent threat piece. Like it's one model, so it could be moving around the board. It could be supporting your Dawn Riders. It could be running around with Fox, and like there's that plays into the Lumineth shenanigans. But again, what do you need? Do you need more shooting? Do you need more shenanigans, or do you need combat, an anvil, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely.
How do you make Wardens, Blade Lords? How do you make the most of them outside of your battle line tax? I think you've given some good examples, right? So whether it's through the Blade Lords, I like your combination of the Blade Lords being backed by the Wardens. Outside of that, we talked about the Hoarfrost. Anything else that comes to mind when it comes to like making the most of Wardens and Blade Lords?
I would say most of the time you guys will rarely ever use Flurry of Blows. I'd say it just never really came up. It's Perfect Strike's just so good depending on what you run into, unless it's like zombies or skeletons. Their Blade Lords are fitting a different role now. They are bodyguards, but now they're a really tanky, cheap, double-stacked battle line if you've got your Scenario Heroes checked out. And I think they are obviously replacing the Wardens, coach, because Wardens, I think, are extremely overcosted at the moment. At 150, I don't think that they are comparable to other units that are in the 150 bracket. And I tried and tested it. They lose to the Blade Lords.
I think.
Oh, I saw that.
Sorry, you froze up for a second. So, can you repeat what you were just saying?
Yes. So I tested out the Blade Lords versus the Wardens, and the Wardens lost every time. Sure, you get a cast out of them, but the Blade Lords are 30 points less. I think Wardens are just in a too high of a bracket right now. I think they'd serve good at 140 or 130. 130 if we're really wishful thinking, but definitely not 150. I think I'm not sure what sins they're paying for, but that deterred me from wanting to run them in any type of battle line type of scenario. That's why I will only commit to Blade Lords at the moment. They just get the job done, and they're so cheap. 240.
We know We know why wardens are 150. Sentinels. They're paying the sins of the Sentinels. That's literally what they're doing. They're paying for the sins of the Sentinels. If that wasn't a 1-for-1 kind of deal where you unlock battle line,
Yeah,
they're not 150. They are
I'm
not
glad
150.
you put it that way. It's true. Yeah, it's sad, but it is what it is. That's why I've only got one unit, and I have definitely considered just dropping it to put, because I have 3 Sonari heroes already, so just putting in Blade Lords instead.
Yeah, it's hard when you look at them independently outside of Sentinels. It is hard to justify 150 for 10 Wardens. It truly is. Like if you think of like 3 Annihilators are around the same price, like you can.
Oh yeah, they took a price drop too. They're so close.
But when you think about like that comparability, and that's just one random example from my head, I'm like,
yeah,
two up 9 wound Annihilators that come from the sky, and like mortal wounds on the charge and on the drop.
They will annihilate them.
It's hard to justify 150. So assume a points decrease is coming. A couple of other burning questions, and then we'll kind of wrap this up because I do need to go to the little boys' room to pee. I don't know if that's a common term in any other country, but just to clarify, I need to pee. What would it take to make Techless a viable in this current Generals Handbook?
Primals.
Yeah.
Right out the gate, primals for sure. If he had access to primals, he would find his place again. And you could probably reasonably leave him at his points cost, obviously. Primals for sure.
Let's assume that doesn't happen because like I can't see them giving so you're letting him extend the cast with the primal dice.
Yep.
Let's assume that doesn't happen. I don't think they will. Let's assume it doesn't happen. Would a points decrease change? Like if he went to, I don't know, say 600, would that be enough to swing it back in Techless's favor?
I heard a comment about he could stay at that points cost as long as he was Era 1 Techless when Techless first came out. And I think Techless was actually in the 500s when he first aired. And when I heard that, I reasoned with that more because of what we discussed earlier about him just being shut out. It's just so bad for him. You take such a huge points loss when he gets shut down because he can't stop you. He can't add anything. He's just like, this is me. What would you like to do about it? It's like, okay, well, you're not going to get that unless you cast one spell for the rest of the game. So you cast what? 5 spells and he's wasted 2K, 3K worth of, or 2,500 points right there, like throughout the game as it goes on. Like, no.
Yeah, you're keeping your 5-up ward bubble guaranteed, but outside of that, yeah, it's interesting. Like, will he ever go back to 500? I highly doubt it. I think Games Workshop are doubling down on God tier. Like Nagash could have gone down. They're just like, nope, you're staying at 1,000 points, basically. Like, nope. Like they're doubling down. They doubled down on the God heroes. But what I'm hearing is like it can be used. Currently, the rules are not in his favor. Points would have to be massively aggressive to drop. Otherwise, it is hard to justify right now. And we are here for 12 months, so who knows what happens. But getting to 500 from 740, I can't see that path happening. Like that is even more than like the Glotkins discounts that he's gotten. And he's been like slowly getting discounts over a number of years.
Absolutely. I would also say, though, I say this already still knowing that there's a 5-0 in this GHB with Techless, but I have an idea of how he ran it. So it's still possible. Anything's possible.
Yeah, like any good player can pilot. So it's not saying that any unit is terrible.
Yeah.
And it'll often be an expression of skill from the opponent rather than this list carried me. So it's no OBR Immortus Guard carrying you to 5-0 victory.
Yeah.
OBR players.
I felt that.
Yeah. Actually, 2 hobby questions. So Manfred, this is a Skaven player. So like, think about this, and like, you might be able to convert someone with your response. What are some of the options in detailing? So dealing with all the trim and the detail and getting used to just painting Lumineth. And I hear that's actually one of the biggest issues is people getting in and just this sheer amount of detail. And it's a hobby painter's dream, but for someone who maybe isn't a committed painter and just wants to get them on the table, it's a nightmare.
My best advice, because this is what I did, is steal the Stonecast Eternal vibe, and that what I mean by that is Stormcast Eternals have a paint scheme where people are turning them into stone instead, and it makes it a lot easier. You just put one coat on them and dry brush them, and they're good to go. I did a similar thing for my Lumineth. So I went with silver instead. And so I spray painted them all silver, and then I Nuln oiled them. So they look like they're encased in silver. And the only thing that's coming out of them is like illumination on their sunmetal weapons. So it allowed me an opportunity to not have to deal with all that extra bit. So if you are worried about all the nooks and crannies when it comes to Lumineth Realm-lords, look up a good, like, I don't even know what to call that kind of paint scheme, Coach Slapchop. I don't know. Look up a good type of paint scheme that is quick and easy for you, that you like, that you enjoy, and just send it. Like, just send it. And trust me, you'll love it. I still, even though my army looks disgusting up close, I still get comments on it from 6 feet away. People are like, "Dang, that army looks sweet," and then they get up closer and they're like, "Oh, gross." It's like,
I'm sure.
yeah.
I'm sure they don't say that, but
I love the 6 foot rule. Like, it's great.
Yeah. Contrast and speed paints, you can get some great effects, especially if you learn how to Zenithal Prime. It's as you mentioned, what's it called? Slap chopping is a term, but Zenithal highlighting with multiple highlights and shades. So when you eventually put down the color, the natural black to gray or black to white transition will create native highlights. So I ain't no Vince Venturella here, so take that with a grain of salt, but you can get and contrast does take well because of the detail. So
it does,
and you can always come back to the detail as well, right? Like, just because you
absolutely.
get a tabletop ready, and you can always come back at a time with a bit more time. Any final advice when it comes to actually collecting the army? Like, do you buy like the Vanguard boxes? Would you start off with, like, how would you start a Lumineth collection?
If you guys can still get your hands on the Start Collecting box with the dice and everything, go for it. As long as it's not being scalped, of course. I haven't actually looked it up in a long time. It may still exist out there. It comes with Eltharion, Dawnriders, Wardens, Sentinels. Great. Grab that. Vanguard box is also very good. But definitely grab a Wind Spirit and make sure it's Severed, because you're going to love it. He's so good right now for 270. It's so good. But yeah, I think you could do really well, and I think you still get some of the cool cards too. So if you can find the initial release set for Lumineth Realm-lords, you'll be great.
Probably way out of date though. Those cards would be way out of date.
They're nice to read.
Yeah, like, this is what you used to have back in the day when you had half an army book. Although you technically still have half an army book. Still need to wait Tyrion to come back. My last real question is any tips for handling the current meta army? So like Soulblight, OBR, Khorne, KO, and Seraphon, which are probably the top 5. And I know handling each of those is going to be different, but if you were to give me some advice, any particular things come to mind with those types of top tier table armies?
Fantastic question. We have such an interesting approach for everything. So my first list, when you go into Khorne, you don't really have a lot to stress out about, because we're not really targeting their units with anything. We can fight the table with self buffs. That's what I kind of revert to. So if I'm against Khorne and they're stacking up their buff for whatever reason to give them a 4-up board, 3-up board, 2-up board, I'm fine with just buffing my own units and going into them. Like, we're good. And that's kind of how I like the list to be, is to have the flexibility to be like, well, I could turn on magic or I could turn it off and still be okay and not feel like I'm down and out. So like, if I'm against Seraphon, who are just saying no to all my spells, I don't care, because most of the guts in my army don't need spells to perform extremely well. but it, there's drawbacks to that. You don't always have speed of hiss. So you're being a little bit more aggressive. You probably are moving forward a little bit more. You're picking and choosing the clutch spells you need in the moment to super cast them as best you can, but you don't need it. And the same can't be really said for the Alarith list, because once you don't have any wards and you're not moving fast, you're taking damage. But for OCR Bone Reapers, a good hint I like to tell everybody is always target the little dummy next to the bodyguard. Never target the bodyguard. They have the bodyguard stacked with so many buffs and this and that, but in the OBR book, they do not have the ability to choose to pass off wounds. It is in there clearly stated they have to pass off those wounds if they're within 3. So might as well put all of your attacks, if you have the opportunity, or shots, into the little dude that's got a 5-up save and no buffs on him, because all that damage you do, he might roll enough once to kill it, so you'll get the kill, or it's just all going to flood into the bodyguard, and they're not going to have their 3-up, 5-up ward shenanigans that we're facing right now. So that's a good little tech piece for OCR Bone Reapers, who are clearly in a good spot right now. Outside of that, don't forget, because plenty of people were doing it, Catacross does not get the allegiance for Null Myriad. So if you are magic heavy with Lumineth, pump your magic into Catacross, because you can't do anything about it. Let's see, who else are the problem children?
So we talked Seraphon. You've talked KO is probably the other one, right? So we talked Khorne, we talked Seraphon already. We've talked Soulblight throughout the episode, but we probably haven't acknowledged KO, because KO has a lot of shooting. They can get you at range. There's obviously the new Army of Renown, and who knows what that's going to look like once it's FAQ'd, but it has an industrial amount of shooting, so it can take out your linchpins, probably much greater than Sevireth, and probably one of the few armies that could take Sevireth down, because you can't retreat from them, and well, you can't get away from them because they have the speed and the range to get Sevireth.
Right. Through my experience, because I've faced KO plenty of times, whether they wanted to go first or second, the best thing that you guys can do is, this is one of those rare circumstances where you are going to be a little bit more cagey in your deployment, because good KO players will not overcommit to your main line. They will pick off the wings, and then they'll move their ways in. So if you have your Dawn Riders on the flanks, then they're going to pick off the Dawn Riders, and they're going to start moving themselves in little by little instead of going after your main element. So if you're tight, they don't really have that opportunity, because you have a lot of ways to react if they do commit to you, because they'll be within, I think it's usually, most KO players want to be within 12. Is that right, Coach? They want to be within 12, I believe.
Yeah, they do have a couple of long range threats, but most of their damage will come in outside within 12, and
12 or 15.
Usually 12, especially when you think about like their disengagement. Although you probably see less of the Thunderer build, more of like the Ironclad with the Sky Wardens that will crash into you, do some mortal wounds, fight, and then yeet out with a retreat at the end of the fight.
So what they'll struggle with immensely, and I don't think we went over this in the video at all, but Shining Company, really, it's such a problem for them. It's so bad to the point of, so when I've been alpha striked, the only thing that they really have to target are Wardens and Dawn Riders or Blade Lords, and a lot of times I want to get through to my Blade Lords, but I'm in such a tight block that they're -1 to hit, blow Aetherquartz, +1 to save, all out defense, and they're like, well, shoot, like I'm already -1 to hit. So I think most of the games have been alpha struck. They've mostly killed one unit of Blade Lords, but like I said about remaining so tight, they don't really have an option to unbind you. They'll probably have the one where they can continue to unbind if they get a successful one. I don't remember the Nullstone icon, something like that. But as soon as Speed of Hish is going, Gravetide's going, Jaws is going, you're dropping ships. Speed is already getting melee units into combat. Total Eclipse is already messing with their command point generation. Sevireth is doing an all-out attack or blowing his Aetherquartz, and he's on his finest hour, and he's sniping the general out of the ship. Like, if you play it right and you practice it, KO should not be an issue for you. It's just when you fan out, you start spreading all your stuff. Great KO players like to just pin cushion all those little things on the outside and work their way in until you have no army left. But if you stay tight, keep it together, you'll be able to react, and the reaction from us is very painful.
Yeah, you've got the tools to counter respond. It's just, can they get your critical things first? And if you give them the good stuff and you new to yourself, then you're in for a bad time. If you can protect them, if you can keep those critical pieces, you can maybe even give them Sephiroth, like Finest Hour, put it at the front, hopefully absorb it. And if they take the bait and can't kill Sephiroth, then everything else responds. Or you protect Sephiroth, for example, and then you counter with Sephiroth and chase down the boats. And again, depends on the game, depends on the list. But
absolutely,
I think there's enough tools in this toolbox for you all to unpack. My last final question, and then I want you to bring us home, is when Tyrion comes and Tyrion's glorious return, what are you hoping Tyrion brings to Lumineth the most?
I doubt it, Coach, but I'm really hoping he's not mounted. And so if he's not mounted, he's going to be an immediate staple for me because I'm excited to play him. But he's going to bring the melee element that I think we're missing. But the Blade Lords are right now definitely filling at the moment. But I think we're going to get that melee centric feeling. And so all these Venari things we have going on, these special traits that do these melee type things, will have a good non-named hero that can take those. And then that are the opposite side of the lore, or the lore seeker. And so that's what I really think we're going to get out of this. We're going to get some heavy cavalry. I'm fairly sure of that. And some rock hard melee with no magic. I would be very surprised if I saw magic coming with his temple, for sure.
Yeah, very light magic, but you're right. I definitely see the melee type of, maybe even some more flying units, maybe some elite flying units, maybe
that would be nice too. Yeah.
Do we see I know Phoenix Guard are gone now, but do we see the return of the Phoenix? I'm air quoting. Do we see Phoenix Guard, the more durable, offensive? Yeah, you've got your Stone Guard, but is there a different version of that coming with Tyrion? Don't know, but I'll tell you who does. Leave in the comment section, folks. Tell me what you want. Let me know what you want to see, because I think Tyrion is probably not far off now. We've talked about this for a few years now. Surely 4th edition, when it drops in the next 12 to 24 months, you assume Tyrion's coming. Maybe Malarian, the Dark Elf himself, will be back as well. So they're going to bring some troops into whatever realm we're going to be fighting in. I think I've lost Jarod again.
Uh-oh, I think I lost you for a minute.
Yeah, your internet paused again. So,
sorry.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. So, is there anything that you want to say, any shout-outs you want to make? And if people want to chat to you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. I wanted to do a big shout-out to my fellow Rage Babies that run the YouTube channel Battleshock Wargaming Studio. We got big plans ahead. If you like solid battle reports with a little extra drop on by, you'll be able to see us there. And you can also find me in the LRL Discord channel. And yeah, I appreciate all of you and the coach for having me on today. This has been great. I'm very passionate about Lumineth Realm-lords. So like I said, I'm in the Discord channel. So if you want to, catch up with me, ask some questions, I should be available.
I'll put the link in the episode description of the Battle Report channel. But just for everyone, again, it was...
Battleshock Wargaming Studio.
Cool. Like and subscribe. Make sure to go check them out. And if you want to see actually Jarod put this theory into practice, you'll be able to see it. So you'll be able to see his deployment, his play, and who knows, maybe after this episode, you'll film a special game with Lumineth, and you maybe put some of this into the mix, and people can see it all, how to work it out, and bring the theory to life.
You guys will also get to see how bad I am with any other army except Lumineth.
God. That's why I play so many different armies, to get a different feel. I don't want the same type of army. I want to give me different things. But Jarod, thank you so much for your time. I really need to go to the bathroom. It was a great episode. I highly enjoyed it. I hope Lumineth players feel like they have new thoughts, new tools, new resources to climb up from the mud, get them into that middle ground. Yeah, you're quite not up there at the top, but you're certainly not at the bottom. I think with a couple of list techs and some extra runs on the board now, that's why things like the Facebook group, that's why Discord, my Discord, Lumineth Discord, go check it out. High tide lifts all the boats. Chat to people. Let's put some more wins on the board. And actually, I don't really want that. I don't want more Tackle. I don't want more Severus.
Sins of the past.
Let's have a reset. We'll see how we go. Jarod, thank you for so much. People who listened, I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if there's something that maybe we didn't talk about. Maybe there's a build that you really like that's doing well that we didn't talk about. Let me know in the comments. But Jarod, again, thank you for your time, and I hope you all enjoyed the chat.
Thank you, everybody.
See everyone. Bye.
Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AOS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a double one on a spellcast.